I just spent the past week listening to almost nothing but Nick Fuentes. I wanted to know more about why he was appealing to so many people. Anyway, the more I listened, there's this funny thing that happens when you listen to hours of Nick Fuentes back to back, and you think you know sort of what he's all about. Then I watched some more of his shows, and contrary to what usually happens when you watch more of someone's content, I started to feel like I knew him less as I watched. He became more puzzling to me, more full of contradictions. Anyway, I've watched many hours, probably days worth of his content, and I'm going to try to condense what I saw so you can get some idea of him that goes beyond just seeing some clips. And I will get a bit speculative about him, about what I think motivates him, whether he's honest, what he's like psychologically. Of course, I don't know the guy, and so this will be speculative. But I went in with the main goal of understanding, trying to understand. This wasn't about trying to find gotchas or to confirm other people's priors about him that he's racist or sexist or whatever. In fact, I'll try to steel man a lot of his arguments along the way, even the ones that, sound kind of vile, at least at first hearing. So here's how Nick Fuentes describes himself and what he does.
I guess I'm just the story of the congenital, like the archetypal young white male of the Trump era. The young white male, extremely online, very political, disaffected, disillusioned.
Now, when it comes to his origin story, he got started very young. He was 18 years old. And he started to get some attention from conservative influencers like Ben Shapiro and others. But then he started asking questions about Israel, and he essentially got canceled.
And instead of getting an answer, I'm getting blocked. I'm getting tattled on. I'm getting clipped out of context. They're selling me out to the left. I'm getting called names. From the very start, this made me extremely cynical and resentful and furious about the whole thing. And I said, I'm like at war now with the whole conservative establishment, and the same opportunities for advancement that other people are getting. They get their spot on Fox News, or they get to run a Turning Point chapter, you name it. I'm now being closed off because there's this smear campaign now going on behind the scenes of powerful, connected people at Daily Wire telling everybody this guy's an anti-Semite. And this went on really for many years, goes on until this day. But that was sort of my origin story. That's how I got started.
Now, Nick Fuentes' show, it's very politically incorrect, but that's what a lot of people like about it.
When I was a teenager, we were getting called racist for everything. Everything was racist, everything. And I feel like a lot of people started out saying, what? How's that racist? I remember used to, like you said earlier, if you called them black and not African American.
Right.
In like 2012, that was a problem. Or colored instead of person of color, whatever. And he'd say, I don't hate anybody for their race. I feel like people have kind of gone full circle. And now 10 years later, people are like, they actually hate non-white people and go, yeah, I'm racist, so what? I don't know. I feel like maybe that's a mistake in a sense. I mean, I've said I'm racist, but like actually genuinely harboring racial hatred is bad. I think it's good as a society we move past that. I think it's good as a society we move past a lot of prejudice. And I think I agree that the new consensus just needs to be, just like you said, that basic conception of fairness, equality. It really comes down to specificity with the language. Like everyone now talks about, are you racist? Are you not racist? I say, yeah, I'm a little racist. I think everyone's a little racist. Yeah, we're all a little prejudiced, and we all believe in stereotypes. And what does that even really mean? But do I believe in cruelty, hatred, violence? No. Let's just be blunt. It's just better to have white people here than non-white people. Like it just is. That's just obvious. Everyone knows that. We want to live in white neighborhoods. We feel safer. We know they're smarter. They're just better at stuff. That's why our countries are good. That's why theirs are shit. Okay? In Africa, their countries are shit. They're not as smart as us. They're not as developed as us. That's okay. I don't hate them for that. I don't think they're inferior. I don't think they're subhuman. They're just not as smart. I don't think Italians are as smart as Nordics. We have different kinds of, I think we're maybe more creative, maybe more artistic.
I'm Italian, Mexican, and Irish. I don't think Mexicans are that smart. I'm from Southern Italy. Southern Italians are not as smart as Northern Italians. They're just not. You understand, I'm saying that it doesn't come from a place of racial superiority or chauvinism. It doesn't come from a place of, it's not malicious, it's not resentful, it's not hateful. It's just, it is what it is. Everyone knows deep in their heart of hearts, they're not as smart as us. Black people are not as smart as white people in general. There are some black people that are smarter than some white people, but on whole, as a society, the societies there are not as smart. Now, you can debate about why. It's because of nutrition. It's about genetics. It's, you can debate and you can have your opinion. It's really not up for debate, by the way, but feel free to disagree on the causes. But that's just the state of the play. That's why those countries don't work. That's why these countries do. Germany is desirable to live in. It works. Denmark, the Netherlands, Norway, these are the happiest, most developed, most egalitarian, most tolerant, most peaceful. These are the best places to live. And it's because of the people. It's because the people create those societies. And I understand why people might not want to say that out loud. I understand why it might make people uncomfortable. They might not want to say it in mixed company. But how can you not just know that that's true? How do you live on this planet and just look around and not just get it? How do you not even deal with them and get it? I mean, when you see these black people fighting in Waffle House, they're dancing at graduation, taking their shoes off, throwing their caps in the air. When you see they don't understand like a refund policy at an airline, it's like these people, like, and when I say these people, like these particular people that are in those situations, they're just dumb. They're not smart. If you walk into a Waffle House with your pants around your ankles and you're yelling incoherently and you're throwing your weave off and punching someone in the face and throwing a plate of eggs at somebody in the face, and someone's recording and going, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, you're an idiot. Like, you're not smart. And I'm not saying all black people are idiots. Not saying all of them are idiots, but like that behavior, like, let's just call it what it is. That's not smart behavior. Smart people don't do that.
You know what? I grew up in the South. We grew up in Martinsville, Virginia. And growing up, I experienced racism. Mm-hmm. I could actually feel it when they're in the room with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can feel it. Like, I don't get that feeling from you.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Yeah.
How about you?
Maybe he's real good in hiding it.
I'm probably more racist against the Southerners than the black people, to be honest with you. Yeah. Yeah. I'm my favorite movies, I'm Italian. My favorite movies are the movies where like Italian gangsters beat up like cowboys and hillbillies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know why. It's just I have such a cultural difference with them.
Yeah.
But
Italians can be very racist.
oh yeah. We are.
We really just need to return to common sense, and not like the gay common sense like Donald Trump, where, he says common sense is like no transgenderism. I'm talking about like old school racism being common sense, where it's like, yeah, we all know not all black people are bad. We also know what's going on with them, and yeah, we don't have some weird desire to like dominate women or, bully them. But we're also like, yeah, they kind of need to be put in their place. They do need a strong hand. They do need someone to treat them in an assertive way. And even as far as the Jews are concerned, for centuries, for millennia, we know what's going on with the Jews. Now, we don't want to kill them all. We don't want to hurt them. People say you're a Nazi. You want another Holocaust? Absolutely not. At the same time, we know they fucking love Israel and they're very tribalist. Is it a good idea to have them run in Congress when they're walking in with an IDF uniform? Obviously not. So we just need that kind of like old school common sense. I would say that's maybe the rebrand. I would say I'm moderate.
You do have ideas that there shouldn't be interracial marriage. Mm-hmm. I've seen those clips. Can you explain why that is?
Yeah, it's not that I don't think there should be interracial marriage. I'm Catholic, so as you know, it's not a sin to be in an interracial marriage or relationship. But I am racist, I would say. I believe in the races. I believe there are white people and black people and Hispanics and Asians, and I think that it's a core part of our identity. It's who we are. And there's like this conservative reflex to say, we're colorblind. Race doesn't mean anything. And, Pat Buchanan said this. He said,
It's not everything, but it isn't nothing. And I definitely lean more towards the latter, which is it really is a core part of who we are. Our culture, our heritage, our ancestors, our customs, all of it. You know, it's not that I don't think that two people can fall in love from different races. Of course they can. And they have throughout history, and the races have mixed throughout history and assimilated. But for someone like myself, I always say on my show, it's just my value. I want to marry someone that looks like me, that comes from a similar background, because I want my kids to look like me. I want my grandkids to look like me.
But sorry, I just want to make sure, did you say I'm a racialist or I'm a racist?
For a long time, I would say I'm racialist. Now I just say I'm racist.
Okay, so when you say you're racist, because these definitions get changed around, racist, anti-Semitism gets expanded. What do you mean when you say I'm a racist? Because I think most people watching this would go, if you are a racist in the traditional sense of the term, why are you on this podcast, right? Wouldn't you just go, you know what, Candace is black and therefore I don't want to speak to her. That doesn't really seem to line up with the traditional sense of the idea of racist. So
yeah, and I'm using it. I'm being a little tongue in cheek. I mean,
this is one of the things that made it initially difficult to try to assess who Fuentes is, because he is tongue in cheek a lot. So it can be hard to tell when he's joking, or sometimes he might not be joking, but he's not really trying to be that precise, because he may be sort of leaning into his more inflammatory side for whatever reason, whether it's because he's just in the moment or his audience likes it. I don't know. Like what you'll see here in this interview that he does with Candace Owens, it's a bit more moderated than what he said in the previous clip. Like in that clip, he's not trying to be understood by the normie. It's like he doesn't care. What's really great about this interview that Candace Owens has with him, though, is that she tries to dig into what he actually means.
For the purpose of understanding, I'd say my views are I'm a racialist. But I do think that we need to deconstruct this idea of racism in the sense that you're black, I'm white. It is what it is. For my entire life, people have been walking around on eggshells about the subject of race, about white people being racist. Can I say this? Can I say that? Can I have this opinion? And me, I'm sort of, Gavin McInnes said it like this. He said, you're kind of post-racist. You're sort of after this craze where everything was racist. It's sort of this recognition that we live in a heavily racial world. And, look, sometimes we have racist feelings. Racist feelings like I want to live in a white neighborhood. I don't want to live in a black neighborhood. If they were all like you, obviously it'd be a different story. But
so that's interesting there, because you see, I'm of the view that the real issue is more about culture. It's like he's basically saying the same thing here. Like it's the culture that's what really matters. But instead of saying that, what by the way would be less inflammatory too, instead of saying that, he just calls himself a racist, or he says that he's racist. And I think part of the reason he does that is that he's just trying to like take the edge off of that word. Like, hey, maybe, so what if I'm a racist? And in one of the earlier clips I just played, he said he wanted to bring back this kind of old school common sense, this old school racism. And I wouldn't exactly call it common sense, but maybe what he means there is, okay, let's just put it this way. I have some relatives, older relatives, Korean, so that's my background. I wasn't born in Korea, I was born in the States, but that's where most of my relatives live, and it's where my parents came from. But I have relatives who, quite honestly, they kind of sound like Nick Fuentes when it comes to matters of race and things like that. Things they say about black people and also Chinese and Japanese. I mean, they're Koreans are they're like ethno supremacists, a lot of them. And it's not like I would disown any of them for those kinds of things, for those beliefs. I mean, they're not like raging racists, like where they're not like activists where they're like trying to shove it in your face and make you believe what they believe. So that's why, I can sit down and have a meal with them, and I'm not going to disown them. And actually, you can make the case that there's a lot of liberals who are almost worse than those types of old school racists. And I'm not condoning this kind of racism, but where was I going? Yeah, I was talking about, okay, there's a certain type of liberal person, right? In my own extended family, for example, on my husband's side of the family. And they are just as bigoted, I would say, as the old school racists. Like the things they will say about certain people, like white America, the things they'll say about people like that without knowing much or anything really about them, a certain type of voter with a certain type of lifestyle, let's just say, a certain type of political affiliation. So without knowing anything about them, they will have all kinds of prejudices. And it's not just that they'll have these prejudices, but they will shove it in your face. And if you don't believe the same thing that they believe, they will disown you. So I know people like this, and they are the tolerant ones. They call themselves liberals. So anyway, I'm not saying that I like the things that Nick Fuentes says here, and I will address some of what he says specifically when it comes to race a little bit. But I do think, in the spirit of trying to steelman him and or trying to understand what he's trying to do, I think he's trying to take the edge off of racism and making it like the worst crime in the world. And let's be honest here, a lot of people are perfectly fine with politicians who get us into wars, which cost American lives as well as lives lost abroad. They're literally getting people killed, and they don't have a problem with that from our politicians. But if a politician were to say something that was vaguely racist sounding, that becomes a huge big deal, and the media goes crazy about it, right? So to steelman someone like Fuentes, I think, we can make the argument like, hey, let's put racism in its place in terms of transgressions. Now, having said that, I don't necessarily think that his approach is the right one, but I'll get more into that.
But when we think of a black neighborhood, we know what that means and why the property value
But
is
that's
cheap.
Black Americans. So this is why I want to understand this idea better, because, and this is kind of something my cousin has said, which I guess you could say is a racist statement, but she says that white people in America are the white trash of white people in the world, meaning that like there's a special category of uniquely that you don't see when you're dealing with like white Americans here, that if you went across to just, like Switzerland, you wouldn't see this version of a white person necessarily, or this, you maybe went to the continent of Africa, you don't see this version of a black person either. Like even if you went to the tribes out in Africa that still exist, they would be a far cry from a black American living in a neighborhood in Compton, right? So I'm trying to understand if you think that it's all black people are like this, or if your world is kind of colored by this is what's going on in America. This has failed for 1,000 reasons. Welfarism has definitely, black people in 1940s stand up. My grandfather, I talk about that denigration and the corrosion of culture. Yeah. That's happening. White, black, whatever you want to name it, there is this intentional corrosion of culture. So do you think it's literally, well, this is just what a black person is when they come out? Or do you think that post welfare, LBJ, Great Society, this is what black Americans have become, and I have a right to respond to that and say that as a white man, I don't want to live there?
Well, I think it's more nature than people would like to believe. There's this classic tension of, is it nature, is it nurture, is it cultural, or is it intrinsic, is it racial? And I've always been on the latter side of this among conservatives. Conservatives like to say it's all culture. Black America is the way it is because of hip hop music and the Great Society and that kind of stuff. And I think the uncomfortable reality is a big part of it is intrinsic. One of the big arguments against the abolition of slavery in the 1860s is that, when Europeans colonized, they hadn't discovered the wheel. There's no two-story buildings. There's no writing. There's no written language. Missionaries had to go to Africa in the last century and invent it for the African people because there's no recorded history. They didn't have writing.
So technically, there was writing in sub-Saharan Africa from way before the time he's talking about. One example was the Gez script in Ethiopia. You can find inscriptions in temples there that date back to the 4th century BC. But anyway, this is beside the point. We can agree that Africa was much less developed than Europe by the time he was talking about.
In sub-Saharan Africa, and Europeans did not penetrate that until late 19th century, they didn't have any of this. To the extent that you have infrastructure in Africa, it's from the Muslims in the Sahel and the Maghreb in northern Africa, where the Arabs colonized. And then you had, Carthage and Egypt, you had ancient civilizations. But sub-Saharan Africa, they didn't have that. You take these people out of that land and put them here, and they're enslaved people. You let them free in a modern, liberal republic, they're not going to succeed. It's not going to go well for them. And that was one of the arguments against abolition
people said if you free them without any assimilation, without any kind of process for them to be acclimated, they're going to die. And that's exactly what happened. Many of like the bottom 10% of like the lowest IQ Africans just died off for generations. And it had a, pardon the expression, but it had a eugenic effect, because over time, if the weakest are dying off, that's one argument for why blacks in America have a standard deviation higher IQ than the blacks in sub-Saharan Africa. So, so I do believe there is something intrinsic going on there. And what makes people uncomfortable about this is the idea that it's unchangeable. There's something about, and this is why I'm a Catholic, we do have an inherent desire for universalism. We do believe that there's a common humanity and a common human community and all of that. We hate the idea that we're born a certain way and we can never change. And that's just the way it is. And we even think about this in terms of, it's become not so popular these days to tell children, you can be whatever you want to be. Because we know that's not the case. Some people are tall, some people are short, some people are smart, some dumb, some ugly, some handsome. That's why, by the way, incel-dumb is a big part of this also.
So you believe these are immutable characteristics that are assigned at birth?
I think that, yes.
For the most part.
Things like race, all those attributes are immutable and unchangeable.
But they have changed. Just factually speaking, they have changed.
They change over time, over the generations.
Okay, so then you don't think it's immutable, because if this was an immutable characteristic,
individual person.
Okay, so you're saying that if you are born at this space and time as a black person in America, here is the cards that you're dealt with, and you can't change that over time.
Something like IQ does not change. No, doesn't change wildly. It only changes genetically over. IQ is a big one, and that changes. That's a genetic trait, and so that can change over the generations, but not. You can't take an individual that's 75 IQ, which is the average in West Africa, and take them to 100. And do you not recognize that there's group differences in IQ?
So I think where he might be coming from with all this is the work of people like Charles Murray. He was heavily canceled for studying things like IQ and group differences. And what he found was that different racial groups had different IQs, and the results were not politically correct. And conservatives talk about this. So my guess is that this is where Fuentes is getting this from. And the argument that they make is that, hey, this is just a fact, doesn't mean that we're racist for pointing this out, because it's just a fact. Now, personally, I'm pretty skeptical of how well IQ measures intelligence, like raw, innate biological potential, as opposed to what the person has learned or been exposed to by the time they're taking the IQ test. I'm skeptical that they've ruled out all kinds of biases. Like, if you think about it, it's a hard thing to measure. And I come from a science background in molecular biology, and I'm skeptical of a lot of those results too, after what I've seen. It's a lot harder than you think to measure things without biases. So when it comes to things like the social sciences, I'm even more skeptical. But Nick Fuentes, he's not very red-pilled when it comes to things like this. There's a funny thing about him, actually, because on the one hand, he's not trusting of institutions, obviously, because he's been banished from them for being far right. But on the other hand, he believes things the way a blue-pilled person would. And when I talk about red-pilled or blue-pilled, I don't mean politically on the left or right. I just mean how it's used in the Matrix. So yeah, Fuentes is actually not red-pilled enough. And later on, I'll play some clips of another example of this when he's talking about medical doctors, actually. So I'm not sure how deeply he's looked into the IQ research, but he pretty much just buys it wholly. But the point is that this is something that at the very least is up for debate, but Fuentes just accepts it uncritically. Anyway, let's continue.
I think that there's group differences, but
Okay.
I wouldn't say, and the reason why I'm pushing back on this is because those perspectives that you hold, Thomas Sowell did a really good job debunking that. And I think the book is called Intellectuals and Race, and he opens up and makes a very sound argument that these characteristics are not immutable, and that it can be your environment. And he kind of goes back and discusses, like, who had the highest IQ and who now has the highest IQ. And so I just disagree with you fundamentally, but you have a right to have that perspective.
So you don't think that there's group differences on average between the races?
I think, just to be clear, I think there would be group differences if you took, like we were talking about, an American versus somebody who graduates college in Europe. There'd be tremendous differences. I
Not
truly,
tremendous, but yeah, there would
there'd
be
be
slight differences.
Yeah.
But
Candace isn't really saying this explicitly, but I think what she's getting at there is that there's probably a lot of noise when you do these IQ tests. There's a lot of noise, and there's something wrong with the method of testing.
you don't
So
think
I
that
think
racially there's differences between races?
I think, yeah, because we have huge differences culturally. So going to your point of saying, I don't want to live in a black neighborhood, well, neither does LeBron James when he gets money, right?
Right.
And there's a reason for that,
Mhm.
because there is something that's happening culturally in Black America that's been going on for a very long time. But that thing, I would argue, didn't exist in.
What about in Africa and Haiti? I mean, they're killing and eating each other in Africa and Haiti. Everywhere where they are, you have these problems. There's not one country in sub-Saharan Africa that's successful. Not one. They're all least developed countries. They're all failed states.
This kind of reminds me, and we could kind of flesh out this conversation together, and I'm not perhaps ready to have it fully, but I do remember going back to Dave Smith where he was conceding a point on, well, all of these other Middle Eastern countries, no, you wouldn't want to live there. You'd want to live in Israel. In my mind, I'm going, well, because you just keep bombing the crap out of them if they ever try to get ahead. I remember watching this clip of him saying that, going, why don't these countries get ahead? And kind of going back in my mind to the Gaddafi speech where he was speaking essentially about, here's what we got to do in Libya to get ahead. Here's what we're going to do with the dollar, and we're going to be progressive and this and that. And they killed him. And then what happened to those Libyan refugees? Suddenly they're now pouring into, just like he said was going to happen, that they were now pouring into the European continent, and Europeans are complaining, who are these people? And so the question is, are we allowing, because I'm like, Africa's a pretty rich country. Like, why aren't Africans controlling the diamond trade? Who's taking all of the diamonds so that they can't control the diamond trade? And how long have these people been doing that, being essentially culture vultures? Like, are we stopping people from getting ahead just because, I don't know?
That just sounds, being honest with you, that just sounds to me like a left-wing argument when they say, why don't these countries get ahead? Colonialism, you're a colonizer. It's like, okay, but when we got there, they had no development. When we got to Africa, they had no technological development.
Okay, this thing about that being a left-wing argument. Sometimes left-wing arguments have a point. His pointing out that the African countries aren't doing well, or that they were behind the Europeans. It's so simplistic. I mean, it's not even sophomoric, because sophomoric arguments, they have a little bit of fanciness to it, but yet they're still wrong. His argument is just extraordinarily simplistic. Of course, there are all kinds of reasons why some countries have done better than others, and just because you see the countries of a certain race doing worse than all the European ones doesn't mean it's because of IQ or intelligence. Obviously, there are a lot of other factors, like geographical factors, or how much the local flora and fauna are able to be domesticated. Things like religion. Have you heard of the Protestant work ethic? There was a sociologist, Max Weber, who hypothesized that the values of certain Protestant denominations, they basically laid the foundation for capitalism unintentionally. But it was their values of hard work, discipline, frugality, and self-reliance. There are also just historical contingencies. In one of my previous videos where I talk about socialism, I talk about how in the 1600s, England codified things like property rights into law. And long story short, this led to the agricultural revolution and then the industrial revolution. And they shot ahead of countries like France, even though France had started off much better than they had. And it took a couple of centuries for France to catch up. And Candace also brought up that the Western world has been bombing or meddling in the affairs of these other countries, like in Africa. So obviously that's going to affect the political system. And sure, I'm sure there are group differences in intelligence among different groups. And you expect this to be the case just through chance alone. But how much do those small differences really affect the trajectory of a nation? Do any of those things reach the level of importance of the political system alone? So if you compare North and South Korea, for example, they're ethnically the same, and they started off culturally the same, but look at where they are now. The point is that this is a very complicated question, but Fuentes is very simplistic about it.
The Catholic Church doesn't say it's a sin to mix races, but there have been various Catholic authors that have said that it's not conducive to a long-term marriage to mix races because you have this clash, you have this dissonance between cultures, between different upbringings. And so they say if the selfless goal of a marriage is to rear children, and you want to make that as conducive as possible, then you should marry within your race.
I can understand why it's better for people in a relationship to not have too wide of a gap in culture, but it's not about race, it's about culture. So why doesn't he just say culture? I mean, why not be precise with your language? It's really not about race. Like if somebody is black or Asian or something, but they are assimilated, who cares?
It's not a sin if
Which
you don't.
Catholic author?
I don't know off the top of my head, but there are Catholic theologians that have said that. It's not conducive to a long-term marriage and stable.
Okay, jumping in here, even though he didn't say that he would produce a document, I thought it was important to fact check this one, obviously, because I don't want people to walk away with a perspective that it's a Catholic teaching or a Catholic idea or a Catholic theology that people shouldn't be marrying outside of their race. So I gave him an opportunity and told him it was important to me if he could supply us with the name or the reading. And this is what he came back with that we were able to fact check as being an accurate quotation from Thomas Aquinas. The quotation reads, "It is less fitting to marry one who is far removed from us in customs and manners, lest the mutual fellowship be hindered." Doesn't say anything about race. I certainly don't disagree with that whatsoever. And so I am not clear on how that could be interpreted as being about race.
You know, if I was in love with a person from another race, I would probably want to build a life with them also. But my values are not just who I'm in love with and things like that. It's also my heritage, my identity, my race. And, I like the idea. It is important to me. My parents look a certain way. Their parents look a certain way. We come from a certain place. I like the unbroken chain. And I want my grandchildren and great-grandchildren to have a similar complexion. I want them to have similar hair. Because these kinds of things, they echo. We're all connected, not just in time horizontally, but vertically across the generations. And so the idea that, 2 or 3 generations down the line, one of my children bears no resemblance to me at all, it's almost as if we're not related. It's almost as if I never existed. And there's something very disturbing to me about that. And I can understand why people are okay with that. Because people have various feelings about race. They say, I don't care about my race or whatever, but I do.
Anyway, he's allowed to care about that. I personally don't care about it. That's just me. So I guess I just don't get this. What I will say is that I know that on the left, they've tried to make you feel guilty for having preferences in who you're attracted to. And, if you're not attracted to these other races, then you're racist, And that I think is all bullshit. And if he prefers white people, whether man or woman, I don't know if he's gay or not. It's fine.
There is legitimate racial hatred out there. And
I know.
People on our side are afraid to talk about it because they know they're going to get called a cuck or a squish or whatever. The people that are detracting from that need to be called out. And I think there should be no harbor for cruelty, hatred, prejudice.
It's interesting that this is coming from him because he himself gets accused of saying hateful things. I would have to think about whether the things he says crosses the line into hateful in the sense that I'm not sure that he actually harbors racial hatred. You saw in the clip with the 2 black guys. I mean, he's definitely not like a raging racist. So that's something. And I never heard him say anything that suggests he wants harm done to other racial groups. Although he has said things like, Black people need to be imprisoned for the most part. So that's kind of borderline. You'll hear that later. I'll play that for you. And by the way, I think everything that I'm going to play from him will be from within the last 6 months. He's had even more inflammatory things from when he was younger. And I'm not even playing those. Again, I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt here. Anyway, there are people who are accusing him of exacerbating divisions between the races, which I think is a fair question. And also, part of the problem that a lot of people have with him is the fact that he doesn't try to get rid of the toxic elements of identity politics by trying to move beyond identity. But instead, he digs into it. And he says this explicitly.
If identity politics is good enough for them, it's good enough for us. Either everybody is going to arm up and get together under identity politics, or nobody can. You say identity politics like it's a bad thing. I think identity is a reality.
yes, identity is a reality, but that doesn't mean that we have to accept it or that it always has to be that way. I think you would make the argument that, well, there are Black people who make a big deal about their race and form groups based on their race and fight for power and privileges based on their race. So why can't white Americans? But I criticize Black people who do that too, or Asians or any group. I don't want an Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month or whatever. So I just reject the premise that we should be making a big deal about racial identities. Now, I don't know if you picked up on how different Fuentes sounded across these different clips I played. In some of the ones, he came across much more inflammatory, right, than in the interviews he gave. In the one on his live stream where he was answering a question from the super chats, I've noticed that he really lets loose on those. It's when he's most anti-PC. But then when he was with Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson or Dave Smith, he was more measured. So he's a bit of a chameleon. I'm not saying that he's entirely fake because of that, because it is understandable to some extent that you'd want to be more measured when you're giving an interview or talking to a normie audience. Although I have heard him say that he doesn't care about appealing to normies. I'll play that later. But I think this is part of the reason why so many people see different things when they look at him. It really depends on what clips they've seen. Because yeah, he's a chameleon and he purposely tries to be inflammatory sometimes. Anyway, we'll come back to this theme. So now we'll move on to some clips about immigration. He's said numerous times that he's against all this mass migration into the country and he wants mass deportations.
My program is I want to end mass migration. I want mass deportations. I want a government informed by Christianity. I want to decouple from Israel. I want industrial policy. Like this is what I talk about on the show.
On Glenn Greenwald's show, he was asked, what do you think should be done with all the immigrants that are already here?
You know, I think that they should have the same rights and dignity as every other American. My only concern, and where it's born out of, the kind of nativist rhetoric, or even to that extent, you know, white nationalist or white identitarian rhetoric, is the idea that the white American experience is going away. It's going extinct. You know, you recognize that because of the demographic change in America, you have these ethnic enclaves from Latin America, from Asia, from Africa that are being set up all across the country. And it almost feels like those places are, they sort of give, they're more of a true representation of their home country than America is of what America used to be. There does need to be something done with respect to that. And I think that what you might call that is something like voluntary segregation. People call it free association.
So free association, we already have that still. I'm not really sure what he's really advocating for here.
People have talked about reversing the Civil Rights Act. My concern is not necessarily because we don't really live in America in a sense. We live in our neighborhood. America's a big country. It's always been a big country. The question is, can there be neighborhoods or cities or states where it still feels like America, where there's still mostly white people, still mostly Christians, still, you know, bear some passing resemblance to what European civilization looked like for the past 1,000 years. That's sort of what I'm preoccupied with. And so I'm less concerned about, you know, in the past, people have talked about an ethno-state or these kinds of things. The demographic change is baked in. At this point, there's millions upon millions of people that are not white that have been here for many years. If I could go in a time machine, I would undo this demographic change. We can't do that. I don't think it's practical, or I don't even think it'd be humane to try to reverse that at this point. On some level, America has to see itself no longer as a homogeneous republic, self-governing, and more like a true empire, more like a federalized system with a stark degree of multiracialism, you know, ethnic and racial diversity. And I think we have to have that reflected in how the country's governed, how we manage relations between the races. I think that's something the government needs to undertake, is sort of an active management of the diversity.
I'm not sure what he means here by active management by the federal government, especially since he also said that we need to see our nation as more like a federalized system. And that's more about letting local or state governments handle more things as opposed to the federal government. And I'm all for that. But at the same time, he's advocating for things like active management of diversity from the federal government. So there's some tension here. So now we'll move on to things that Fuentes has said about Jews or Israel. This is something that Fuentes was pretty early on. And this issue is what essentially got him ejected from the more mainstream conservative scene.
I mean, as far as the Jews are concerned, I think that, like I said, you cannot actually divorce Israel and the neocons and all those things that you talk about from Jewishness. So you say on your show that we need to treat Israel like any other country. And I sort of understand that in principle, but Israel is unlike every other country in the sense that because the Jewish people are in a diaspora and because of their unique heritage and story, which is that they're a stateless people, they're unassimilable, they resist assimilation for thousands of years. And I think that's a good thing. And now they have this territory in Israel. Somebody like a Sheldon Adelson, he's not Israeli. His heart is in Israel. And it's because he is a proud Jewish person. But it's sort of a rational self-interest politically to say, I'm a minority. I'm a religious ethnic minority. There's like a natural affinity that Jews have for Israel. And I would say on top of that, for the international Jewish community. They're extremely organized, and many of them are critical of Israel or Israel's current government or the project of Israel. But I guess what they have in common is that they have this international community across borders, extremely organized, that is putting the interests of themselves before the interests of their home country. I love all people, even the ones that don't like us. We have to love them all, and we have to recognize that
we're required to.
Yes. But I guess my substantive disagreement, which I've said on the show also, is the idea that neoconservatism and Israel has nothing to do with Jewishness. You know, the plan of greater Israel, the blood and soil nationalism of Israel, it stems from this ethno-religion, which is Judaism.
Well, this is, just BLM, the new version. This is identity politics. They're engaging in identity politics. But the problem in your response, I get what you're saying, but the problem in your response is it does not apply to every individual.
No, and I would never say that.
My big worry is the conversation going to stop at, we need to end all these wars and like the neocons are the problem? Because my critique goes further, and it says that it actually does have to do with Jewish identity. Jewish identity is so powerful and so potent. Jews refuse to assimilate. They're so powerful. They're so tribalistic. They're loyal to each other. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And that is actually where the Israel loyalty proceeds from. It's this anxiety. We need Israel because what happens if it goes south here? We need to be powerful in America to prevent a majority from rising up against us. And it's kind of that identity issue, that's why I'm open to talking to you or even somebody like a Bill Ackman or a Sean McGuire or a Shapiro and say, I recognize Jews are a part of America. They always have been, and they're some of the finest Americans, actually. But people recognize it cannot go on this way where we have an open society, but they have this loyalty and kind of play by a different set of rules. I do look at the world through an identity-based lens, that you've got whites, blacks, Jews, and they all have political interest. They all identify as these groups. They group up based on them. And then those groups have conflicting interests. When you look at Israel or even the Jewish community at large, their influence over America, it proceeds from their deep and entrenched and systematic influence over the elite institutions of America, like the Ivy League universities, like the major financial institutions like BlackRock, like the major talent agencies or Hollywood studios, like AIPAC in government, everywhere where you find power.
Like the media.
Exactly. Everywhere in all of these powerful, the media too, and all these powerful institutions, there they are. And there they are advocating on behalf of an alien interest, whether that's the interest of Israel or Jews as a transnational community.
So a lot of people have called him anti-Semitic, but he's willing to sit down with Jewish people like Dave Smith. He's not a raging anti-Semitic in the sense that he can't sit down with Jewish people. I don't think he actually hates all Jewish people. But again, he's not precise with his language, and he'll say things that certainly sound inflammatory. There's a clip of him from many years ago where he's talking about the Holocaust, and he's talking about the people who died in the Holocaust as cookies baking in the oven.
Max says, if I take 1 hour to cook a batch of cookies and Cookie Monster has 15 ovens working 24 hours a day, every day for 5 years, how long does it take Cookie Monster to make 6 million batches of cookies? I don't know. That's a good question. Certainly, oh, no. It doesn't really sound correct to me. Wait a second. It takes 1 hour to cook a batch of cookies, and you have 15 ovens, probably in 4 different kitchens, right? Doing 24 hours a day, every day for 5 years. How long would it take you to make 6 million? I don't know. It certainly wouldn't be 5 years, right? The math doesn't seem to add up there. The math doesn't quite seem to add up there. I don't think you'd result in 6 million. Maybe 200 to 300,000 cookies. And I think the Red Cookie Association said something like that, probably 200 to 300,000 cookies baked, probably. And in addition, in this hypothetical, I imagine that if you took aerial photographs over the kitchens, you would need to see certain smokestacks to release the smoke from baking the cookies, and the smokestacks would project certain shadows, but I guess they're not visible in the aerial photographs taken over the kitchens. Moreover, if you look at the soil texture, it's really not deep enough for mass cookie storage underground. And so there's a lot of things. In the cookie kitchen, they say that the ovens are wooden and they have windows on them and they're not totally secure. And the ovens that they use, they actually did sort of an ad hoc use of that particular kind of oven, even though they made a perfectly good design for ovens for a different purpose, for delousing. I mean, for something else. So none of it really adds up. I don't know. It just kind of doesn't really make sense, this crazy cookie analogy.
So obviously that was very crass. It wasn't so much the fact that he was questioning the number of people who died. The main part that bothered me was that he had a smirk on his face while he was talking, like it was a funny subject. But anyway, he's gotten a lot of pushback for this, deservedly so. But I do want to point out that there's this double standard, because when he says something like this, he'll get plenty of pushback, as he should. But I see all the time people who will talk about Palestinians like this, and they get nowhere near the same level of pushback. So here's an example. So Ilya Shapiro, he would call Nick Fuentes an anti-Semite, but he has no moral high ground, because look at some of the things he said. Subhumans must be eradicated. By the way, he's at the Manhattan Institute and might actually become a judge as well. Anyway, next, let's move on to what Nick said about Hitler.
Second semester, I got home in the spring and I was like, Mom, Dad, Hitler was awesome. Hitler was right. And the Holocaust didn't happen. And my parents were like, we cannot believe what you are saying. We did not raise you like this. I'm like, I can't believe you're not being chill about this. He goes, well, you gotta admit, you said some fucked up Nazi shit and you need to clarify. And it's like, no, I really don't. Because everyone knows when I'm joking and when I'm serious. And the stuff that's jokes are jokes and the stuff that's serious is serious. And I don't need to take anything back. There's 2 categories of things I've said on my show. Things that are jokes and things that are true. And the things that are jokes are jokes. And everybody knows that. And the things that are true are true. And what have I said about Hitler? I said on the Alex Jones show many years ago, a few years ago, I said, I'm not a National Socialist and I'm not a Hitler supporter or worshiper. I've said, but Hitler does not occupy my mind in the way that it does with these histrionic pro-Israel Jewish people. I'm trying to get us to a point where people say, Hitler is just like every other leader. It's like, okay, he was one of the villains of history, like Genghis Khan, like Ivan the Terrible, but we're not going to be obsessed with it. Like, I'm not on board with this whole, like, Holocaust Hitler religion. Yeah, I'm really kind of ambivalent. Hitler's fascinating. That time is fascinating. Just like everything was fascinating. The Bolsheviks, the Nazis, Stalin and Hitler. It's history. It's all fascinating. It functions as myth. It's myth making, which is to say they have created, and don't kid yourself, there has been some artistic liberties taken with this to create this narrative that Hitler is the most evil man ever, and he tried to destroy the Jews, and that is why we have to have Holocaust museums everywhere, and we can never talk about white people, and we can never talk about Jews, and we can never, because we don't want another Holocaust. The post-World War II order was created contra Hitler for a reason. We need to demythologize Hitler, demythologize the Holocaust. I've said, sure, maybe the Holocaust happened the way they said it did. Maybe it didn't. Who fucking cares? Why is that like dogma? Why is it dogmatic? The Holocaust happened exactly this way or else. Is anything else like this? And Hitler, as far as we are concerned, is another in a long list of brutal tyrants, of which there have been many over the years. Stalin was brutal. Mao was brutal. Pol Pot was brutal. And people talk about, well, what about the gas chambers? Well, to the extent that that's real, I find that hard to believe, but to the extent that's real, there have been atrocities committed and genocides committed in all times and all places. Let's acknowledge why Hitler casts the long shadow. Because that confers a political benefit upon Jews. That's why. Whenever anybody says, how about white people are pretty impressive, huh? Hitler, Nazi. Whenever somebody says, gee, America kind of was a white country, now it isn't. Hitler, Nazi. These Jewish people, they're pretty rich and powerful. What's up with that? Hitler, Nazi. And these Jewish people that are obsessed because that's their trauma, that's their story, that's their struggle. My bubby died in the Holocaust. Okay, sorry. I'm sorry for you. Just like slavery and it's just like annoying. It's the same way that all of black culture is fixated on like minstrel shows. You watch something by Donald Glover or Jordan Peele, and all of their cultural output is about Jim Crow and slavery. From Jordan Peele, another horror movie about Jim Crow and slavery. No, we don't fucking care. That's your obsession. You're obsessed with like black lawn jockeys and minstrel shows and how everything is secretly racist. Now, to the extent that I make jokes about Hitler, it is basically to treat this in a sacrilegious way. It is to blaspheme this religion. It is to destroy the sacred cow, the idol of the Holocaust. That's the point of joking about it. Well, what about the crazy Nazi shit you said? I'm like, who cares? I've said a lot of provocative stuff about everybody. I've said provocative, offensive things about Polish people, about Southerners, about Mormons, about blacks, about women, about men, about married people. I've said provocative stuff about everybody. That's what the show is. It's politically incorrect. It's uncensored. It's supposed to be that way. America, this show is like a safe space for Americans. This is where Americans can joke about everything and anything, and we don't feel beholden to anyone and anyone. And then every now and again, somebody butts in and says, hey, well, what about those jokes about Jews that you make? And it's like, this isn't fucking about you.
I agree with a lot of things with Fuentes here. The subject of Hitler, it is this sacred cow. And I think it would be good if we treated Hitler like any other historical figure who committed mass murder. Now, the place where Fuentes is maybe not entirely honest is that he's claiming he just said that Hitler is fascinating as like a historical figure. But in the first clip, he said something like Hitler's great, but it wasn't just that he was a fascinating figure or something like that. But this is what Fuentes does. He's not precise with language.
The good news is it's over. The bad news is now we're being genocided and you're fucking privileged. Hello? I would say to Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin, the Holocaust is over. The bad news is now my race is being genocided. You have your own country. You are all rich. You are all powerful. We are discriminated against as whites. we are going extinct. We are not allowed to organize on our own racial identity and on that basis.
I think it's a little hyperbolic when he says there's a white genocide, but I see his point when he says that white people are discriminated against. There are certainly cases of that. That's what affirmative action is essentially. And the point he makes about white people not being able to organize as white groups, yeah, I think that's probably true. Like, you'll get into trouble. But anyway, I agree with a lot of the things he says here. But my main issue is that, again, he'll make stronger statements than what he said here, where he'll say he's a fan of Stalin. And then if people push back on that, he'd be like, no, obviously I meant that he's like a great man of history. But, well, no, that's not obvious.
It's actually funny. It was December 18th. I remember because that's an important date to me. And it's Joseph Stalin's birthday.
Oh.
I'm a fan.
You're a fan of Stalin's.
Mm-hmm. Always an admirer.
Now, when people asked him what he meant by this, here was his response.
I think Stalin's an evil person. He's objectively an evil person. He's objectively a horrific murderer and a terrible human being. But I've said on my show, I believe in the great man theory of history. Stalin, as evil as he was in a moral dimension, was the most effective statesman of the 20th century. Inarguable. Brutal, evil, a killer, a prosecutor of the Christian faith, but there was something calculated about his political machinations. And I think that's fascinating. Maybe admiration's the wrong word. I find him to be a fascinating figure, just like I find many figures. I think Netanyahu's a fascinating figure, the great man of history of Israel, without a doubt. But great is different than good. Good is a moral word. Great is a question of magnitude. To say something is great, when you talk about a great room, you're talking about its size, its grandeur, its impact. But that's just like a law. He said Stalin. Like, can we grow up? But people are pretending to be offended by this. This is just low IQ bullshit. People love to say, I want to hear your most controversial opinion. And then you say, I think great men of history are interesting. And then they say, but he was bad. We all know that. Yes.
See, again, Fuentes isn't really being honest here. He's saying that outrage is fake. No, it's because if you say that Stalin, that you're a fan, it's not the same as saying Stalin is fascinating. I mean, I think he knows this. So I don't think he's being honest here.
Genghis Khan was evil. Napoleon was evil. Ivan the Terrible was evil. Yes. We know this. We're students of history also. The same people, you could say the same thing about George Washington. George Washington owned slaves. You know, if we're going to start playing that game, that's just like a weird left-wing thing where we say we can't look at history because, Robert E. Lee defended slavery. Well, George Washington owned slaves. Obviously, Stalin was, many orders of magnitude more evil, but the principle is the same. We study history. We look at things that are admirable about people while also understanding they've done evil things. Anyway, it's undeniable. Thank you for it's honestly just like mind-numbingly stupid and dishonest when people say, he said he liked Stalin. This is why I could never be a politician, because if you say that, just shut the fuck up. You're an idiot. I hear people say that. You know how ridiculous you sound? People say, he's a Stalin apologist, one of the worst dictators in history. Do you hear yourself? Like, you are so stupid, you should be put in prison. Like, it's pathetic you even have to respond to that. I think a historical figure is interesting. You said what? But what about the part where he killed people? Yeah, damn, that's crazy. Because we're all children, right? Like, we live in Disney Channel. We live in a Disney Channel original movie. I only like the world leaders that don't kill people. All zero of them. I'm only fascinated by the world leaders that never went to war had a hand in any kind of conflict or domestic repression. Because I'm a child. I'm a woman. I'm 3 years old. I'm literally a retard. Wait, but Nick, you know he killed people, right? You know he killed people? He killed people. You know that, right? Oh, no, I had no idea. I never heard of this. Oh, yeah, well, the only word that could be spoken then about Stalin in the record of history is that he was a very bad man. Nothing else can be said about him or anyone else for that matter. To even respond to that is beneath me. To even to even rebut that with anything other than like pissing on your face, like shitting down your throat is just beneath me. You know, like this super chatter in the beginning of the show. What are your thoughts on Stalin killing 30 million Christians? Oh, I didn't even think of that. Wow, yeah, that's crazy, dude. Wait till you hear about every fucking historical figure ever. You know, like what if I say Napoleon is cool? Am I going to go, you know, because they thought Napoleon was like Hitler. You know who invaded Europe before Hitler? Napoleon. You know who was the butcher of Europe before Hitler? Napoleon. How ridiculous would I sound if I said that someone who says Napoleon is cool is a monster? You know, I think Napoleon is fascinating. I've always been fascinated by Napoleon. You said what?
By the way, I was showing some of these clips to my husband, and he's a big music fan, and he said that this reminded him of punk rockers in the 70s. So before they came on the scene, music had gotten so silly, so bloated and overproduced, like these wind chimes and elves dancing and things like that. And punk rock was supposed to just take it all down. And this is like political punk rock. Young guys are so sick and tired of the wokeness in schools and campuses, and they want to break that all open. There were even punk rockers, by the way, who wore like swastikas and played around with these like Hitler tropes. I think mainly to just be transgressive, like Sid Vicious from the Sex Pistols, Joy Division. The name Joy Division, it comes from a concentration camp term, but they also had this Hitler Youth on their cover. So yeah, some of this anti-woke stuff, it's like this era's punk rock, except with less drugs, less sex and drugs. Fuentes doesn't do any drugs. In fact, he tells his listeners not to do drugs. And he calls himself an incel. So yeah, punk rock without the sex and drugs. It's transgressive. Now you can make an argument that the kind of things that Fuentes says, they're more dangerous than what the punk rockers were doing, the kind of music they were making, or wearing swastikas or Nazi outfits. You could make that argument. So I'm not saying they're exactly the same, but there are parallels here. Okay, let's move on to what he says about women. You're in for a treat.
When you really have a guy that's out there challenging women and telling guys to challenge women, it seems like that is almost just as much of a forbidden subject as talking about the Jews. And that is, you also have equally the same amount of obfuscation. What I mean by that is when you talk about who runs society, people are always doing these gymnastics to say, well, you know, it's not really the Jews. They'll say that it's satanic pedophiles. They're just blaming the Jews, or they'll say it's globalists, or they'll say it's leftists who happen to be Jewish. They're always contorting themselves. They're sort of admitting there's a problem. They're admitting the problem, which is that a minority that hates us is running society in a conspiratorial way. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows what's up. But they have to come up with these like convoluted theories to obfuscate the reality and say, really, it's something else. And the same thing happens with women. Because guys get to a certain age and they're like, you know what? Women suck. Like they're talking too much. They're not hot anymore. Like you're fat, you're chubby, you're not as hot as you think you are. You fucking talk too much. You're a bitch. Why do you have this job? You don't know anything. You're an idiot. You're like, you can't tell me anything I don't know. As a matter of fact, you couldn't name 5 countries. You couldn't tell me what continent China's in. You say that, everybody kind of realizes women need to be taken down a peg. Women are in control. Women are running our lives. They're clearly not up to the task. They need to be taken down a peg. And equally, just like the obfuscation with Jews, you have all these people saying, no, that's not the problem. The problem is modern women. They say it's all these degenerate modern women. You need to find yourself a good girl who's traditional and Christian and conservative. It's like they're telling us what to do too. They're talking way too much too. Half the time when you go on Twitter and you have some stupid bitch wagging her finger in your face, she's a Christian. She's got a Proverbs in bio. She's got a Bible verse in her bio. The problem in the West is that women are out of control. They're out of control. If you believe in the natural order, if you believe in the Christian creation story, the book of Genesis, then properly understood, the role of women in our society is secondary. It is not primary. There is nothing in the Bible that would give you any idea that in a social context, women should have equality with men. There's nothing in the Bible that says this.
In the book of Genesis, it also says that all of creation was made in about a week. So does he believe that part too? Anyway.
But from a social point of view, there is nothing in the Bible that would tell you that men and women are the same, that they're equal, that they should have equal standing in society. Women should not have the freedom to wear whatever they want, say whatever they want, go wherever. It should not be like this. Jews are running society. Women need to shut the fuck up. Blacks need to be imprisoned for the most part. And we would live in paradise. It's that simple. But the older I get, the more I realize it is really this simple. We need white men in charge of everything again. That's it. People think I hate women. I don't. People think I hate moms. I don't. I love moms. I love women.
By the way, someone can love women, but also think they're stupid. Like, that's how I feel about my cat. I mean, she's kind of stupid. She's not a genius, but I love her. I mean, who doesn't love this? Look how adorable this is. See this?
I just don't like bitches. And I think women get that. Women know what that means. Women know what it means. You got women, and then you got like a total bitch. And women don't want to be a bitch. You know, they want to be pleasant. They want to be attractive. They want to be lovely. They want to be loved by men. They want to be loved by a man. And I think every woman recognizes you don't want to be known as like a total bitch, like loudmouth, obnoxious, assertive, that sort of thing. And maybe that is not true of like a feminist generation, but I think if you're from a certain culture, you know what that means. If women are, and there are many women in my life that I love. Michelle Malkin, Gina Florio, Faith Goldie, Lauren Chen. I love these women. And you know what they all have in common? They're all Asian. No, but that's true. But you know what else they have in common? They're all women. They're nice. They're pleasant. They're beautiful. They're sweet and affectionate. And there's something light about them. They're pleasant. Men love women because women are nice to be around. Because women are a break from the competitiveness and the coarseness of life and competition with men. So that's not the problem. If every woman was like Michelle Malkin, I would be a feminist. If every woman was like Gina Florio and Lauren Chen, I would be a feminist. But they're not. Every woman is like unpleasant. They're picking fights. They're sarcastic. They're shit testing men all the time.
The shit testing is an evolutionary adaptation. Women shit test men because they want to know that the men can handle it. And it's this choosiness from the women, at least evolutionarily speaking, maybe not these days as much. It may even be that this choosiness is what led to the greatness of humankind through sexual selection. The men who passed the shit tests and also impressed the women with their skills, like artistic skills, musical abilities. That's all I'll say about that for now.
I'm trying to actually discourage women. If you're a woman, I'm trying to demoralize you. I'm trying to discourage you. I'm trying to encourage you to get married. You're supposed to get married. Don't talk as much. I think every woman could afford to talk less. Women should focus more on complimenting men, being sexy, being kind of playful, fun, and not so fucking bossy. Women are annoying as fuck because you know what women do now all the time is just like tell you what to do, tell you what you're doing wrong, tell you their opinion. Because men don't do this. Men don't come around and say, hey, stranger, you need to do this, you need to do that. I mean, I guess they do, but I respect it more because it's coming from a man. And men are smarter, as we all know. Men are smarter, so I'm actually, when a man says you need to do this, you need to do that, and it depends on the guy, but I'm going to sit down and listen because men are smarter, braver, stronger, have responsibilities. Women should just be more like, what my favorite words are when a woman talks? I made cookies. I don't know how any man, for women, I get why women don't think this way because women are idiots. Women can be very intelligent, but women are suckers. Women are so credulous and they're just not logical. If something makes them feel bad, they won't believe it. Oh, well, don't you think that's kind of sad? Well, I feel bad for them. Well, be that as it may. That's the truth. So women are idiots.
Should women vote?
No, absolutely not. Women should not vote. We should repeal the 19th Amendment. We should take it away. They vote for the wrong candidate every single time. Every single time the women vote Democrat, they vote for the wrong person.
I mean, the same can be said about college-educated men in urban areas. So does he think we should take their vote away too? Because they vote for the wrong candidate every time? I mean, maybe he does, actually.
They vote for more spending. But above all else, I think that women, we have to look at voting as a position of governance. If you're casting a vote, you're determining who should be in the government. And I don't think that women should be in the business of government at all. I think that government and leadership is a domain of men. And I think, honestly, very few people should vote altogether. I think that it's not just exclusive to women. I think that people that have only been in the country for a generation or two shouldn't vote. I think people that are indigent shouldn't vote. I think that young people shouldn't vote. I think probably people that don't own anything shouldn't vote. And I think we should get back to a system where a vote is cast really as a representation. I think the vote should be cast by the head of a household. I think that if a woman gets married, her political expression is represented in the vote of her husband, in the vote of the head of the household. I don't think that it's women's position to be in leadership over men, over society. It's completely outside their domain. So I don't think they should vote at all. And I think the evidence is clear. I mean, ever since they got the right to vote, it's been all downhill.
So, yeah, I don't agree with this part. And again, is he joking? He says he jokes a lot. It's hard to take someone like this seriously, honestly. I don't mean when it comes to how much he can achieve. I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes very successful in politics. But I just mean, I can't really take someone like this that seriously as like a pundit, someone that I go for the truth about issues, what's happening in the world. I understand that men these days, they have things to complain about when it comes to women. I understand that certain things are now stacked in favor of women in a lot of arenas. It's like this affirmative action stuff again. Companies will have quotas to hire and to promote the women. I find all of that annoying. We should get rid of it all. It should all be based on merit. But then some people will just go too far and push back against this and then say, no, the men just need to be in charge of everything. This is a much bigger topic. I don't even really want to get into a detailed response to this here, but I may make a video about what I see on the right, certain parts of the right, going a little too far, in my opinion, when it comes to pushing back on feminism. There's a lot of problems with feminism. I don't think a lot of it helped women in the way we think it did, but there are some people on the right who have gone too far with it. By the way, the way he rants about women, so I don't know what woman or girl did to him, but yeah, he sounds really angry. And maybe if you asked him, well, do you hate all women? And he'll say, no. And he said in one of the clips there, he said, I don't hate women. Again, he's self-contradictory. He's not precise with his language. I think sometimes on purpose. He says he doesn't hate women in general. And he probably doesn't hate his mom. He says he loves his mom. I believe him there. But there is this level of anger. Seems like that should be something he should work out.
And I think a lot of men are looking at women and they're very liberal. They're overweight. They have a very high estimation of themselves. I think that people call it hoflation. Their sense of their own looks and sexual value is very inflated. And so a lot of people are looking at these like frumpy, obnoxious, loudmouth, liberal women who are also very promiscuous and saying this is not actually appealing at all. I don't even blame it on the women because I think that it's the incentive structures. You know, women are allowed to do this by the legal system, by kind of social norms, the attention that is available to women. Women go on Instagram and they get attention from thousands of men. So it's the incentives. But I would say that, because I hear this all the time, people say, well, the men need to step up and be better and lead the women. Easier said than done. One critique I have of the men is they enable this behavior.
Well, that's for sure.
It's epidemic of simps who, and especially with Christians, I've noticed this. Christian men, Catholics, Protestants alike, are both kind of tone policing the men. And they worship their wives. They worship the women, put them on a pedestal. And they kind of get bossed around. They get henpecked by the women.
So Fuentes sees all this in terms of power. The women have a hold over the men because the men adore their wives, but that's what the men want. Most men want that. They want a woman that they absolutely adore. You should consider yourself lucky if you find that. But I guess he just doesn't understand this. I think in this area, he hasn't had very much experience. We're going to get to that later when we look at some other clips where he talks about his sort of dating life. He is a self-professed incel. And so in this area, he is particularly ignorant.
I would say that when you say you don't fully understand women, to me, I feel like women are very simple.
No man who has gotten to know a woman well would say something like this.
In terms of...
Have you ever lived with one?
No, I haven't lived with them, but I mean, and don't get me wrong, maybe it's difficult, but I feel like they're pretty simple.
We're all pretty simple. I mean, no one's more simple than I am, but we're all pretty simple. But what I mean is like on a day-to-day, on the level of experience, like you don't always understand what they're saying because it's never about what they say it's about.
Right.
And men just tend to be kind of dog-like in their straightforwardness. You know, I'm hungry, I'm horny, whatever it is.
I disagree. I feel like men are complicated. I feel like women are like, I'm hungry, I'm horny. I feel like men are very complicated.
Really, how?
Because men are masters of the universe. Women are the universe. You know, this is what Spengler says about them. And so I think that men have like a deep connection to things like math and space, and they want to conquer the world.
So Bob Murphy, on his podcast, this is what he had to say about this.
Incidentally, Nick, in case you see this, the reason men go and study things like that is because you're more likely to solve quantum gravity than to understand why your wife just blew up at you, right? The supernova. Okay, yes, I understand why the star exploded. That makes sense. There's principles at work there that could, in theory, be understood. Other stuff. Hey, women don't know why women do what they do. So there's no chance that you're going to have, all right? So beyond that, me just amusing me and reminding us that, he is, I think, 27. Okay. Beyond that, though, I would just say to all of his fans or whatever, that should be evidence to you that he really does not understand the world as much as you think he does. And yes, he's clever and he has some insights here or there, but there's a lot going on that he's completely oblivious to.
Yeah, so much more that could be said here, but he's just very ignorant about sort of the facts of life. Like he just doesn't seem very well developed in this area.
You're 27. You're no longer 18.
True.
So when you go a week ago and you're like, you don't need to do it. Here's why you don't need to do it. Drop in the N-word. Some of the words that you drop. For a person who knows how to communicate as well as you do, when you use those words, you get an average person to question your intelligence. And you don't need to do that. You're above that. You're so talented. Why go there? What's going to change about your approach? Anything, or are you planning on being the same?
To be honest with you, I don't think there's much that needs to change. I mean, so many of the things I've said that I regret or are unfortunate things, it's things that you get whipped up talking about something you're passionate about, and out of anger, something like that, you take it too far, you say something careless. And so, to the extent that
it's a reminder of our mortality. I always try every day to keep it truthful and to make sure that it's coming from the right place. I don't think we should be emotional. We shouldn't want to be angry. We should want to be prudent, and we should want to be thoughtful, and we should want to act out of rationality as opposed to emotion. And so to the extent that Charlie Kirk died, how it affected me, I'm going to try harder to move in that way. But I think I've been tending in that direction for a long time. And I try to tell my followers now, I shake my head when my followers are trying to be edgy or edgelording, trolling, whatever. I totally agree. And I try to be a better role model now. And in politics, you do got to be careful what you say, because you're right. And everybody's always watching.
You know, I guess when you compare some of the things he was saying years ago to the past year, he's toned it down just a tad. Now, as to whether he will continue on that trend, he's in a bit of a bind because I think he wants to get mainstreamed. I think he wants to become more popular. He wants more listeners. But at the same time, what a lot of his base liked about him was that he was this truth teller, meaning he says the things that everyone is supposedly thinking but are too afraid to say. But he'll say it. He won't even mince words. He has said this himself, that he just keeps it too real, and that's what people like about him.
And everyone is feeling the same thing that I'm feeling. I'm just the most articulate at expressing it. And that's why people love me. Because the things that I'm saying, it's the things people are feeling. The things I'm saying, it's the things that people are thinking. It's the things they can't say. So I'm a real human being. There's no pretense. Sometimes to a fault. Sometimes it's a detriment. But they hate me because I'm literally too real. I keep it too real. Everybody else is playing games. Everybody else is strategizing, and I'm gonna lie to the people strategically. They've got their public and private positions, and there's a pretense. And me, I'm not even capable of a pretense. I'm not even capable of that. I literally keep it too real. My realness is destroying the Republican Party. My realness is why they want to kill me. So,
yeah, so toning it down, there's the risk that it could become a liability for someone like him. He's got a reputation to uphold.
And I see this like all the time. It's guys like Tate, guys like Ye, people like me. You find somebody that is telling the truth, hardcore, just here's the raw truth, no qualification, no conditional, no, well, it's not really women, it's modern women. Well, it's not the Jews, it's, these left-wing communists. Oh, it's not. Find anybody that is telling the hardcore truth with no shame, fully red-pilled, fully based, no compunction, not playing games, not worrying about, whether Republicans are going to get elected, not worried about how this is going to make, retard conservatives look, not worried about what normies are going to think. Oh, we're losing the normies, we're losing them. The things that I've said in a serious way don't need to be taken. I've never said anything serious I would take back. I've never said crazy shit that isn't obviously a joke, that isn't obvious edgelord, we're trolling, it's a meme, it's whatever.
On that PBD podcast, he did mention sort of passingly that there were things that he said that he might have regretted where he went a little too far. So there's tension there with what he's saying here, but I guess this is nothing new. This is what he is. Very contradictory. Again, this is why you can watch hours of his content and still not really know who he is.
Well, yeah, the edgelording, even for me, has lost its appeal. It just seems passé because 10 years ago, you couldn't say that stuff, and that's what made it provocative.
Yeah.
And now you can say it. So, and also, it's been done for 10 years. So, internet edgelord, oh, you've never met someone like me before. It's like, we've all seen that. And that, and the audience, they perceive everything as cucking. If you're not sprinting towards the most vulgar, extreme, fanatical, they say that you got the call.
Anyway, because of all these confusing things and the inflammatory things he said, some people have speculated that he's a Fed designed to make the right wing look bad, or certain segments of the right wing, like maybe the Israeli critical side. In other words, the fact that he's such a prominent anti-Israel voice, it can make all the anti-Israel or anti-war voices look bad to normies in the mainstream. They all just get lumped in with people like Fuentes. Tucker Carlson has openly said that he thought Nick Fuentes was a Fed, but, recently he had him on his podcast, and this is what he said.
Fuentes discredits the reasonable people because he's always banging on about the Jews. And so he makes everyone else look like a Nazi. And so it's like he's playing a pretty valuable role in the same way that Israel has always funded extremism throughout the Middle East, including Hamas, because it discredits the reasonable people.
Anyway, I think Tucker Carlson, he says he no longer believes that, and that's why he had Fuentes on his show recently, and they talked about it on his podcast.
I would just say I disagree. I mean, because you said the other day, they like me. I don't know what you're talking about when you say that, because
I don't know.
Let me just kind of rebut that.
Well, by the way, I'm not saying you have anything to do with this. I'm just saying I've noticed the phenomenon.
Totally. And I just reject that because they have been messing with me for my entire adult life. I mean, the ADL got me banned on YouTube. The SPLC posted my house on their website.
What do you mean posted your house?
They posted a photo of my house on their website.
Okay, so I know I've been pretty harsh with Fuentes, but something I will say that I really like about him is that he's really funny. So here's a clip where he gets asked about his dating life, and he gets asked about this a lot, and he's very impatient with it.
Tucker and all these people desperate for you to wife up need to bone up on the gospel. There are those who remain chaste for the kingdom of God.
Okay.
All those who can grasp it should grasp it. Sad is the incel. Holy is the soul. Keep winning souls. Nick.
Okay. Thank you for that. Do we want to crash out on that tonight? What are we feeling? Do we want to crash out on that tonight? Are we going to do this again? We're going to do this again? Really? Another night, another fight over this? The gospel says you don't need to get married. Oh, yeah, well, I had this feeling that women are annoying, but then I had to flip through the gospel and say, where's the passage? What? It's like, look, man, first of all, none of your business. Second of all, I just don't like people. Third of all, I especially don't like women. Fourth of all, I don't want to live with one. I don't want to live with the woman. I don't want to do all that. I don't want to go through the humiliation ritual, the best man speech, the elaborate proposal. I don't want to buy flowers. I don't want to buy an anniversary gift. I don't want to have to talk through my decisions. Where are you going? I don't want to have to do it. I don't want to have to share the fucking bed. I'm working myself up to it. And really, it's none of your business. You don't need to defend me. You don't need to say, here's why the gospel says it's cool that Nick is a weird incel. I get it. Sheesh. We're doing this again? I don't need you to defend me. Thank you, but I can handle it. And I don't need to appeal to... I'm not chaste for the kingdom of God. I just hate people. Okay? It's not that deep. You need to bone up on the gospel. You don't understand me. I'm like Shinji. Nobody understands me. Do you really need to go that far? We don't all need to be priests to say women are fucking
Buy your grow
annoying.
percent $20.
Okay?
Ding.
I'm an odious curmudgeon. I am a rizless recluse, and women hate me. Women naturally hate me. They don't understand me. So it's really going to take a special situation, a special arrangement. A woman that doesn't speak English, maybe a woman that's blind, maybe a woman that's autistic. It's going to have to be someone that just isn't even living in reality, basically. I'm what you would call a high-tier incel. You know, these girls on TikTok got the wrong idea. Like I'm this sweetie pie, like I'm this really nice person. I think I'm a warm person. I'm not a very nice person. I'm pretty moody. The idea that I'm sitting here waiting for some like stupid fucking bitch to rock my world and make me happy, like get the fuck out of here with that, please. So what was the question again? You're praying every day for you to find your wife. Oh, me too, brother. It's so hard, isn't it? It's so hard. I like my life. People are always shipping me with various e-girls, and many e-girls are always trying to get my attention because they want to ride the clout. That always amuses me to no end. It's like some stupid bitch hits me up and she thinks she's going to skip the line. But I'm a girl. Hello, I'm a girl. And it's like, do you think, hey, you know what's so funny? A lot of women really think that because I'm like not a player and everything, they think that I'm like desperately wanting action. And they think that if they just show up at my doorstep, that I'm going to be like, a woman is interested in me? Well, come on in. Like, get the fuck out of here with that. That pisses the, like, presumptuousness of that is so infuriating. And like a lot of like mid and ugly women hit on me, and they think that because I'm like an incel, they think that it's like, hey, listen up. I'm rich. I'm famous. I'm reasonably young and good looking. You think that like I'm some kind of charity case? Go fuck yourself. I see it. It's like you talking to me, the audacity, and you think what? This is the bargain bin? You think this is the discount mart? Why? Because I'm an incel? Look, I hate women. It's not that I couldn't get sex with women if I wanted. I don't like dealing with them. I just need a concubine. I just need a prisoner. And I'll be humane. I'm a good guy. But we can't be doing the e-girl thing. I'm not playing these games. I'm not playing these internet games with a foid. I will never play these games with a foid, with a fucking foid. Not gonna happen. You know what you're dealing with? So, anyway, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I gotta get married, but I don't really feel like it. I don't really want to. I don't even know how I'm gonna start that whole process. I kind of just want to buy one, like at the store. You know, that would be so easy if I could just like pick one out. I'm not gonna do the banter. I'm not doing it. You're not gonna get me to do it. I won't play that game. I'm not doing banter in a text conversation with a woman, okay? I'm not gonna do the, you know how when guys and girls flirt and they do this kind of like shit-eating, fucking dick-sucking, like playful banter, and it's always gotta be like funny, and like I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not putting on a show for you like that. Okay? I'm not doing that. I'm just not subjecting myself to this humiliation ritual that is modern dating. You know, modern dating is like, you know that episode of Frasier where the guy goes out and says, he goes to a restaurant and he tells the waiter, here's your tip. I'm going to put a stack of dollar bills on the table. And every time you make a mistake, I'm taking $1 away. And every time you do something good, I'm adding $1. That's what modern dating is for men. You encounter a woman and on your profile, oh, I don't like the picture. Oh, I don't like this and that. Minus this, minus that. Then you engage in the banter. You're putting on a show. Oh, I didn't like the banter. Oh, I didn't like what he said. I'm bored. He's not a good texter. He replied too fast. $1 taken away. Then you go to the dinner. He didn't buy an appetizer. He didn't buy me drinks. He didn't get the waiter's attention. Like, I'm not doing that. So, yeah. So I don't know. I need to get really rich. That's why I need to get really rich. Like that guy in that TikTok, like Crown, like Nicholas Crown on TikTok. That's why I need to be really rich. Because when you're really rich, then you could just do some straight up illegal stuff and you could just capture one. You could just buy one. You could just hold auditions like the Joker. You could just send your assistant out. You could send the family office to Ukraine and say, give me 15. And bring them to your private sex island and break a pool stick and say tryouts, and throw, here you go. We're playing Naked and Afraid. The winner gets the Real Housewives of Billionaire Sex Island, So that's why you just need to be really rich to escape the matrix. Otherwise, you're a pawn in some woman's game. I won't do it. So anyway. So that's that. So that's sort of my plan. No, we're just having fun. We're just having a good time and freestyling. We're just free thinking over here. This is not that serious. It is not serious. We're just being playful and fun. What was the question again?
Are you a virgin?
I am, yeah.
You are? Really?
Yes.
Wait a minute, how old are you?
I'm 25.
Oh, shit. Oh, you're young, though. It's still
Dude,
young.
I couldn't get past 18. I was waiting. I was going to do it in the garden and everything. I was like, I can't take it anymore.
Yeah, well, I'm Catholic, so I'm
Right.
I'm waiting for marriage, but
Right.
also, I'm kind of like an autistic guy. I don't want to totally, because I feel like it's kind of a cop out to say, "Oh, I'm just religious." There's a lot of religious people. You know, they're doing it anyway.
I'm religious.
You know what I mean?
I'm religious. Nigga.
Exactly. Yeah.
I believe in God and everything. But I'm gonna bust me some nuts.
What you doing it? Yeah. So I can't totally use that as a cop out, but I'm really just I'm kind of an antisocial person. I think to do what I do, you kind of have to, because I have been told, not to be totally self-righteous or whatever, but I am totally ostracized because of my views. If I were I think that's one of the things that holds people back. If I was one of these guys that was just obsessed with getting chicks or even partying, I don't drink or smoke either. I've never had a sip of alcohol. If I was in that lifestyle, you have to understand that's how they get you. So much of our politics is compromised because they prey on people's weaknesses. Like Lindsey Graham, they got a tape of him being gay somewhere. That's how they control him, you know?
By the way, something that's also funny is the way he'll insult his callers. These are people paying him money in the super chats, but he'll just grill them. And I think he actually got that from Mark Levin.
I was listening to Mark Levin's show. This goes to show how normie I was.
Actually,
I listen to him every day.
you listen to Mark Levin every day.
In high school, yes.
Wow.
I was a fan. I loved his show, and I actually liked how he was kind of obnoxious and mean to his callers.
Yeah.
Vicious, and I liked that. I thought that was funny.
Anyway, it's kind of a psychological trick when you insult people that way. It's similar to how if you look up pickup artistry books, it'll tell the men to neg the women. This could work in the opposite direction too, but by doing that, they'll sort of unconsciously place you above them. Something like that. I don't use this trick myself, at least not consciously, but it's a thing. He's probably aware of it. So on to a completely different topic. One of the things that some people think about Nick Fuentes is that he and his followers, they're just all about tearing it all down, and he just has this negative, destructive message. But that's not the sense I get at all. When you hear from some of his callers, they're often asking things like, I plan to get into politics. What do you advise? Things like that. And then Nick will just be like, why are you asking me? Figure it out. And Fuentes himself has said a lot about this topic and how he and his followers should become as successful as they can, get rich, get educated, become lawyers, things like that, infiltrate politics and the government and institutions. And I think he sees what he's doing as the next thing after Trumpism. Trump started something and in his view didn't actually take it far enough. And he wants a movement that takes it further.
I got into this when I was 18 years old. I became a Trump supporter in March 2016. I campaigned for Donald Trump in New Hampshire in 2016. I was a MAGA student. I joined the alt-right, started a live stream based on the Trump movement, and I become completely disillusioned with MAGA, Donald Trump, Trump world. Now, on the contrary to where a lot of people are with the Trump movement, I am not somebody that has ceased to believe in politics. I think there are a lot of positives, and I think probably on net, Trump might have been a positive. His effects on political correctness, the culture war, the discourse surrounding trade and war and free speech. And unlike a lot of other people who have completely lost faith in politics or in America, I think that the problem with Trumpism is that it didn't go far enough. But I always thought that. I felt that way in 2016, the night before he won. That all Trump had to do was defeat Hillary Clinton and open up a window. All he had to do was plant the seed. And everything that came after was just a bonus. And I still feel that way. I think that whatever your feelings are about Donald Trump, Nick Fuentes would not exist without Donald Trump. Donald Trump changed the political climate and culture, planted a seed, preaching a message. However, perfectly or imperfectly, he lived up to it, of America first and American revanchism and of implicit white identity. The task is now up to the next generation, which is my generation, to take the baton and carry it forward. To recognize that Trump was not the final word. He was an opening, a window of opportunity, a stepping stone. Rather than reject outright Trumpism and his legacy and everything that has happened in the past 10 years, we have to make it worth it by building on top of it. But I don't think that young people should be completely disillusioned. This is a multi-generational battle. We always knew that. This is a civilizational, centuries-long, multi-generational battle. This 10 years was a short period. Have to engage in politics. You know, a lot of people are very down on it. People say, well, you know, we're not going to vote our way out of this. No, but if enough young people who are brilliant get involved in some way, either they become rich or they become influential, you know, in 20 years, we will have a different class of people that are running the show. And, you know, maybe if nothing else, I mean, this is how I sort of imagine it in my mind. We need to create a cadre, a revolutionary class. And by that, I mean, we need lawyers, professionals, entrepreneurs, money people, political people that when called upon, when summoned, can go to Washington, D.C. and run our society for a revolutionary new regime. Because we effectively had that opportunity with Trump. I just think about it from my experience. Trump won the election in 2016, and he had no gang. He didn't have any niggas with him. It was just him. So it's like, who do you run the Treasury? Who do you run the State Department? Well, you got to fall back on who's there. And that's Wall Street. That's the bureaucracy. That's the usual suspects. That's because there was no cadre. People need to create this revolutionary class. That's kind of been my project. How do you kind of have a truly new birth, like baptize a new country with kind of like a new movement? And I think I said this on Dave Smith, the responsible and mature people, I consider you to be one of them, myself, Dave, Tucker. I mean, all these people, the responsible and mature people need to wisely guide the crowds, build something institutional, and kind of guide the country through the transition. It's not, the fight isn't over yet. We're still very much in the fight.
So yeah, those are his intentions. And he has this cadre of loyal followers. He does have a tendency to burn bridges, though. This is a whole rabbit hole that you probably don't want to go down, and I haven't gone down in it all the way. But there's various bits of drama between him and lots of other people, not just the people he's criticized, like Candace Owens and Milo Yiannopoulos, and they've said some things about him. I haven't looked into all of that, but it's out there if you're curious. But he's also burned bridges with people he's very much aligned with, who are his friends or collaborators. So here's an example. This guy, his Twitter handle is Arvol, and Fuentes has been on his podcast a little while ago, but recently Fuentes kind of went off on him because of something that Arvol describes as not being that big of a deal. So it makes Fuentes look very, very thin-skinned, and I'm not saying I know who's right in the situation. I don't have the full background, but there are a lot of stories like this. But here is what Arvol says happened.
So apparently I am now dead to Nick Fuentes. He says he will never help me again, and he says that no one else should help me either. This is because I privately DM'd him, asking for clarification on his stance on birthright citizenship. A clip was going around where he seemed to endorse birthright citizenship.
And by the way, I don't care what color you are. I know maybe that's going to be controversial on my side. But seriously, if you have citizenship, if you were born in this country, this is your birthright. This is our lives. This is our rights. This is our heritage. It's our tax dollars. It's our government. It's our military. This is our country. This is our empire.
Now, I knew that his stance in the past has been against that policy. I was actually in conversation with a much larger user on X in DMs, and he was attacking Nick. I was defending Nick, saying, I don't think Nick is changing his position. This is actually consistent with what he said in the past. But I wanted clarification from Nick before I defended him publicly. I told Nick in DMs that I wanted to defend him publicly as long as I knew that we were on good terms, and I got clarification on that point. It's not a ridiculous question. I asked him that question, and he responded with this.
Really? And so everybody that did that is dead to me. So I saw Devin Stack say that. I saw Asha Logo say that. Eric Arvol is DMing me saying, "Are you against birthright citizenship?" in DMs. Really? How are you going to be pro-white? You're not even going to support me. How are you for all white people and, ecumenical pro-white politics? You're going to throw me under the bus? I'm not being attacked by enough people. I'm being attacked by literally everybody. I'm being attacked by Mark Levin. I even told Tucker to his face. I said, we have to be pro-white. I said those words. I said, we need to be pro-white. We need to talk about white people. I am pro-white. And the so-called white nationalist crew, rather than circling the wagons to defend me and what I thought, even after I was nice to Arvol, even after I had him or I went on his show, they're taking the piss. They're gonna ankle bite. They're gonna try to. If I say you're a citizen, I'm talking about, obviously, we should not be afraid to say that we're citizens, we're Americans. It goes without saying that birthright citizenship is not legitimate. That should go without saying. Should we have to put an asterisk there? When I say citizens, I mean, people that are actually citizens, not, you know what I mean by that. So that was really disappointing and really sad and really pathetic. And I'm disappointed how few of them defended me. Any of them defend me? I don't want to name certain names, but holy smokes, it's really sad. This is why I never liked a lot of them. I never got along with them because they're resentful. They're resentful and spiteful. It's not what they believe. I came out of that milieu on right-wing Twitter, but it's a tall poppy syndrome. It's like someone succeeds, someone starts to make an impact, and then they want to cut that person down and just say, oh, well, So that was a totally dishonest reading. I mean, literally, and I'll just say it once more. The clip on Friday, which I'm referring to, I said, if you're born in America, this is your birthright. We're citizens. This is our country. And they said, oh, so he supports birthright citizenship now. It's like, that is such a dishonest, talk about a semantic, trivial little thing. We need to take down Nick Fuentes so that some other guy can go on a generational run and, we'll wait for some other person to get influence and impact and get a platform, someone who deserves it. Fuck you. You're dead to me.
I think the fame dynamic has gotten to his head, and he is a bit narcissistic. There is this disconnect in his behavior. On the one hand, he claims to care about the truth and philosophy and our race and collective well-being. On the other, he acts as though he prefers a multiracial society. He lives by choice in a multiracial city. Has he done anything to tangibly benefit a single white family? He's pushed our message, yes, but that has also helped him. That's not self-sacrificial. That is his platform that allowed him to rise to where he is. I am really tired of the promissory white identitarians out there who say that at some point in the future, I'm going to benefit ordinary white people. Meanwhile, they are trying to maximize their individual status, wealth, networking into their system. They're working for the enemy. They're making as much money as possible, trying to gain status as far as possible. And one day, it's all going to come back and benefit ordinary white families. I don't buy it. I used to say I want Nick to be president. He's not an appropriate leader for white Americans. We need our own communities. We need the white community to come together. But what he wants is a multiracial coalition to bring about political change. That's also legitimate. So we need both forks here. But now, do I want him to be president? Will I support him no matter what? He said no one should help me. Now, he's never claimed he's going to deport all the non-whites. Never. He has said that it's baked into the cake and whites will become a small minority. He just wants them to be a wealthy minority. And then one day, maybe they bounce back. But how? He has not explained. What policies will be enacted? Will it be white supremacist policies that incentivize birth rates in the white community specifically? How could he possibly achieve that with this legal structure? I would like to see some reassurance from Nick that he does care about ordinary white people. He does want to help ordinary white people. He does respect other pro-white advocates. And then maybe we will get behind you.
So this is starting to feel a bit familiar. We've seen something like this before. Like when Nick made that statement about Stalin, said he was a fan, and then people had questions, and he said, it's just so disingenuous. You know what I mean? No, people don't necessarily know what you mean. And in that clip that he was talking about just now, seems like it would be understandable to at least want clarification about what he meant. Now, I don't know the whole story behind all the back and forth between these people, but the impression I get is that Fuentes is a bit thin-skinned. He's got this chip on his shoulder. Maybe part of it is just because he was attacked so much when he was young, when he just got started, and he's been attacked relentlessly, and people have thrown him under the bus or didn't have his back. That might be part of it, but only a part, because I'm not always sure how honest he is about these things in the way he tells them. And maybe he's also a bit oversensitive about some of these things. So there's something else I noticed, and this has to do with statements that Fuentes made after Charlie Kirk died. Since Kirk died, Fuentes has not been consistent about what he said about Kirk. Right after Kirk died, he made some statements where he said, yes, we were enemies, but he didn't deserve to die. And he said some very positive things about him and has said positive things on various interviews he's given recently. But on his live stream, he sounds different. So let me just play some clips for you.
But I do think that I harshly judged him. I think when anybody dies, you feel that way. And I think especially since he died, you look at him and you realize this guy was not actually the worst guy in the world. You know, he was kind of my nemesis in a way. And maybe I was his on the right wing. But I realized that we had so much more in common than we disagreed with, actually.
I think that it's a political marriage. She's an operative. He's an operative. He happened to be killed. She's going to take over his responsibilities. Charlie Kirk was a shill. Doesn't deserve to die, but that's what he was. His wife was put with him in an arranged marriage.
That was from last month, mid-October. So less than 2 months after Charlie Kirk died, and when Fuentes said all those nice things about Charlie Kirk. Now he's saying that Kirk was an op and a shill. He also said things about his wife too, and you know, that it doesn't matter here because I don't think that he was ever that positive about her. At least I haven't found statements to that effect. But about Charlie Kirk himself, Fuentes has publicly said very, very nice things, saying that, definitely not saying that he thought he was some kind of an op or a shill. But on his live stream, totally different story. And by the way, here are some things that Fuentes said about Kirk right after Kirk had been assassinated.
This was a worker. This was a champion. And above all else, maybe this is what I respected about him the most. We had our disagreements. Where we did agree is that he would go to these college campuses and proclaim the name of Jesus Christ. And ultimately, that is why he was killed. Everyone will be persecuted for the sake of Jesus Christ. Anyone, everyone. Fighting and winning that spiritual battle for Christ and for his kingdom will be persecuted for his sake. And I don't believe Charlie Kirk was any different. These are the most vicious, violent, hateful detractors of even a moderate conservative like Charlie Kirk because he stood up for those biblical values. I'll say it better, Christian values, Christian morality for Christ himself, for the truth incarnate. And for that, I consider him a true martyr. And I hope his reward is in heaven. I'll also say he was clearly a loving father, a loving husband. Charlie Kirk was a good man. God bless him. By every metric, a positive, cheerful person, a generative person, someone who loved America, fought for what he believed in.
So fought for what he believed in. And a month later, Fuentes would say that Charlie Kirk was an op or a shill. So I don't know how to square all that, except to say that Fuentes is very comfortable lying. If I'm missing something here, let me know, because maybe after he said all these things, he found something that made him believe that Charlie Kirk was an op or a shill. It would have to be very convincing because Fuentes sounded quite sure of himself there when he was saying that Kirk was an op or a shill. It wasn't just like, well, there is some evidence to suggest that he might have been an operative.
People kill each other with bullets and literally murder each other and take their lives. We also kill each other by destroying each other's reputations. When we lie about somebody, when we gossip about somebody, when you go and actually do the examen of conscience at confession at a Catholic church, and you go through all the different sins and you say, because you have to contemplate, you have to confess everything, every mortal sin. And one of the violations of the commandment, thou shalt not kill, is gossip, detraction.
It's attacking somebody with a lie, because that's a form of killing somebody in a certain sense. It's a form of damning somebody. And so I wouldn't say we need to lower the intensity, but we should always move in love. And by that, I don't mean some kind of like new age and move in love, very vague and non-specific.
Totally
But I mean, we should want what's good for everybody. We should will the good for us, and also even for our enemies too, and for the whole country.
Anyway, I have to wonder how much of what he says does he actually believe at this point. So I'm going to play a clip from his interview with Candace Owens, and they've been in a feud for a while. And I'm not saying that I know that she's right about everything in this case, but what becomes kind of apparent from this clip is that Fuentes will just say stuff to attack someone based on very little. So in this clip, they're together, but she's actually playing back a clip for him of what he said on his show about her, and they're watching it together.
No invitation, won't bring me on the space, won't bring me on the show, no acknowledgement, nothing. But she is going to do a show with Dave Smith, Jew, Aiden Ross. You know, and I like Aiden Ross. I've said that before. I like Aiden Ross. But it's like you get canceled and attacked by Jews, and then you go and give it away to all the Jews, really?
She's speaking of Dave Smith. Yeah. What does that have to do with anything? You call out the fact that I spoke to Dave Smith, that I spoke to Aiden Ross. I didn't speak to them because they were Jewish. I also talked to Piers Morgan, all of these shows following me being fired. So you're just looking at the fact that these two, I didn't even know Aiden Ross was Jewish. I just had a PR agent say, do this. I swear I didn't know.
He's visibly Jewish.
Okay, but just so we're very clear,
No, I know.
I genuinely had no idea. Your PR person comes, here are the shows. Okay, yes. Dave Smith, we had amazing conversation when I was on the Daily Wire.
Mm-hmm.
And so your purview here is, okay, well, they're Jewish and she's doing their shows, while not saying to your audience she's doing a bunch of other shows too.
So he was complaining that she wasn't bringing him on her show, and he's complaining that she's going on these other shows with Jews, and doesn't mention that, well, it's not just Jews, it's a lot of other people too, right? This was right after she got fired from her job at the Daily Wire, so she was doing a whole bunch of shows. I mean, he's got a chip on his shoulder. To some extent, it's understandable based on what's happened to him. And I probably don't appreciate the full extent. I almost feel bad for him, actually. I do. But yeah, he's not doing himself any favors. Here's another issue that I have with him, and it's just his general sloppiness. And it can be difficult to know where the sloppiness just is a lie. So the thing he said to Candace about her going on all these podcasts with Jews, was that sloppy or was that a lie? Leaving out the fact that she was doing a whole circuit of podcasts. Or the thing that he said about what the Catholics said about how people who are in a marriage, they should be similar in terms of, I forget what it was, but the way he quoted it to Candace was that it was discouraging mixed race marriages. And then she fact checked him. He apparently didn't come up with Catholic authors who said that. And what he apparently did produce from St. Thomas Aquinas didn't say what he was saying. So was he just lying about that, or was it just sloppiness? And here's another example. In this case, their statements about J.D. Vance.
Vance was an artificial creation of Peter Thiel, of Elon Musk, of David Sachs, of the CIA, the American Enterprise Institute, of Netflix and CNN.
Okay, so some of those people have either promoted Vance or, in the case of Peter Thiel, was majorly involved in financially backing Vance. So Vance used to work for Thiel and also got financial backing from him when he co-founded a venture capital firm, and also got money from him when he ran for Senate. And Thiel lobbied for Vance to become the VP. But this thing about Vance being a creation of Thiel or Musk or any of these other people, I mean, he doesn't have anything to back that up. Just because people promoted you, whether it's financially or through media or whatever, doesn't mean that they created you or that they own you. Peter Thiel has also backed Eliezer Yudkowsky in the past, but lately he's been criticizing him and even made some remarks that, I mean, he called him a Luddite and sort of insinuated that he was like this antichrist figure. So just because someone financially backs someone doesn't mean that they own them. I mean, I think people think that because it seems like, well, I guess that's just how it is. It doesn't actually work that way in a lot of cases. It's often more nuanced, and sometimes it's true, but there's a lot of nuance to it. Now, I don't know if this is true or not. I haven't looked that deeply into it, but there are some people who have claimed that Fuentes once asked Peter Thiel for money and was denied. So, according to them, they think that a lot of the criticisms against Peter Thiel are actually personal. Anyway, I haven't looked that deeply into these people's accusations, but just putting it out there, and someone should look into it. I'd be curious to know. Okay, next, let's see what Fuentes has to say about free speech.
You had referenced earlier the fact that you essentially are one of the most censored people on the internet. Like, you were just banished from every platform. You suffered this extreme amount of big tech censorship based on a theory that said that your views were so dangerous that you were essentially provoking, if not implicitly or explicitly encouraging violence against various minority groups. Whether that's true or not, that was the theory used to justify your censorship. And yet after Charlie Kirk's assassination, you yourself started to sound a lot to me like those very people who demanded your censorship. You put up, it was very direct. You said, quote, Hassan Piker should be banned on Twitch and then deported back to Turkey. And before our side starts to cry about hypocrisy, remember that you can't say the word retard on the platform, but you can openly incite murder against conservatives. Enough is enough. Have you changed your mind about censorship, or have you always been of the view that it's only wrong against conservatives but okay against the left?
Well, my views on censorship are that I guess I just don't buy this idea that if we are in principle against censorship, then we can avoid these slippery slopes and everybody is able to participate in this public space. But that's not, in effect, actually how it works. I remain censored. And when the left was in power, they used that power to censor me. I believe that if the left gets power again, they're going to censor again. And what's really sort of incumbent there is that the right wing needs to win. So somebody like Hassan Piker, for example, he thinks I'm a Nazi. He basically is antagonizing or instigating his followers all the time. When they say things like punch Nazis, you're a Nazi, this is in effect greenlighting violence. And we do see this all the time. I mean, you have left-wing people that are going around shooting up churches, assassinating figures like Charlie Kirk, shooting at somebody like Donald Trump. Hassan Piker didn't even talk about me for many years because he said, we don't platform Nazis. He got me banned on Twitch. It was after I won a debate with him in 2019, I think it was, that him and Destiny ran it up the flagpole and got me kicked off the platform because I won the debate. And so, I just don't subscribe to the idea that when the right wing is in power, we're going to protect the rights of the left. Then we're going to wait for the left to get power and they're going to crush us. They're going to get us censored. They're going to get us deported, all those things. So if I were dictator of America, I would have free speech forever. But unfortunately, we are in this competition. I don't support hate speech legislation, but I do think that when the right is in power, we should take these opportunities to disempower the people that would try to suppress us in the future. I think that's just, unfortunately, the reality of power in politics.
So I bring this up because there have been some libertarians who have aligned themselves with Fuentes because they agree on issues like Israel. But I'm not sure that they realize how fundamentally different his politics are from theirs. So, for example, on free speech, but also other things. So, for example, if you are anti-foreign intervention, you're not down with regime change wars or going into countries to steal their stuff just because it's in your interest, you're going to have issues with what Fuentes thinks on this.
So, is it so simple when you're talking about the geopolitical strategy here in South and Central America to say that writing a check or bringing the military in is never America first? I don't think it's as clear cut. And I'm not saying I endorse regime change necessarily. And in Venezuela, I think that regime change could be catastrophic. So I still think there are risks associated with these things. I still think it could be argued that it's not being handled in the best way. But we have to keep in mind that America is an indispensable country in the world. Whether we like it or not, we are an empire. And is it in the best interest of the American people to pull up the drawbridge and retreat into the fortress and just let China take over the world? Let these other countries take over our territory, our domain? I don't think so. I think that It is actually better for Americans to have an empire. I think we want to have an empire. And to the extent that Israel is a hostile power, to the extent that Israel is going against us, then maybe they don't fit into that equation. But the Western Hemisphere is ours. South and Central America belongs to us. Their resources belong to us. Their markets belong to us. And we also want to keep, in my opinion, South America on our side of the ledger. I think that it would be a good thing if America could take all their oil and natural gas. We need the energy. We want the energy. So I like the idea that Trump brings to the table. When he talks about annexing Canada and Greenland, I'm for that. When he talks about overturning these regimes in the Western Hemisphere, I'm hesitant to support regime change. I think it has a poor track record, but in principle, I like it. I like the idea of it. And I actually don't like these kinds of, I don't like these small-minded arguments where people say, anytime America uses its wealth and power, that's not America first. Well, what exactly is America first? Is the only thing that the military can do to patrol the border? And some people might say yes, but I would say no, we want to control our periphery. We want to control a sphere of influence. Is that not what every other country is doing? What is Russia doing? What is China doing? What is Iran doing? They're securing their sphere of influence. They're securing their periphery. Americans do benefit, actually, from being the foremost superpower in the world. We benefit from primacy. It's good for America to have as much power as possible. I don't know about you guys. Maybe this is just my personal philosophy and my political philosophy. I think that it's good for America to have as much power as possible. That's what making America great again is about. What does greatness mean to you? Does greatness mean that we shrivel up like the libertarians want us to, and we don't tell anybody what to do, and we sit at the United Nations with our hands folded in our lap, and we get lectured by fucking communist third worldists and Russians and the Chinese and Netanyahu, and we raise our placard and wait our turn to speak? That's not what greatness means. Greatness means that we will become the number one superpower ever in history, and we will dominate the world. That's what greatness means. That's what it meant to be great as America. When people say make America great again, they don't mean like the 1820s. No, they mean like the 1950s, let's say. And the beginning of that, we have to nationalize the population, only those loyal to America. Then we have to nationalize the economy. We need to rebuild our productive capacity. If you can't make tanks, if you can't make ships, if you can't make chips and semiconductors, you cannot project power. So we need to bring the workshops and the factories. We need to bring the manufacturing and advanced manufacturing back to the United States. We need to nationalize our education system.
Nationalize the education system and nationalize the economy. So this is the opposite of what libertarians say they want. This is an absolute nightmare for people like them. And also some of the things he says, I mean, he sounds like a neocon.
We need to restrain Israel. I would do regime change in Israel. I would install a puppet in Israel working for the U.S. government. That's kind of my vision of America first. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit different than like the low energy Ron Paul America first, where it's like, hey man, we just want to be a republic and not bother anybody. Who are we to tell Venezuela what to do? It's their gold. What do you mean it's their gold? If they could defend it. They have 28 million people. They can't defend their gold. But you're not going to tell me that we should not strive to be like Rome, that we should not strive to be like Napoleon, that we should not strive to be like these other countries. That what makes America great is that we're going to leave everybody the hell alone. When it comes to Venezuela, when it comes to Argentina, these things that are happening, I can't find an ideological reason not to support it. Because if we don't do it, some other country will. If we don't control these banana republics and their corrupt governments, China will. And if we don't control their infrastructure, like the Panama Canal, for instance, China will. We have to be careful not to go too far in the other direction and say, hey, man, why are we going and messing around in Venezuela? I don't know, because they're practically our neighbor. So I'm a big believer in we need to use power in a restrained way. We need to prioritize what's important to us because of what is feasible while we rebuild American power. But the idea that we've just sort of like given up, and it's like, okay, well, this government said that all the oil is theirs now, and then they're going to give it to China. I guess we have to abide by that. I don't think so. Go die for Venezuela, Nick. It's not about dying. First of all, it's not a ground invasion of Venezuela. Second of all, it's not for Venezuela, stupid. I'm not saying we should liberate Venezuela for democracy. I'm saying we should take their stuff for us. And we can do it without actually a ground invasion. So that's just pussy shit. This whole what is a war in America's interest? We're only going to fight when we're attacked. We're going to wait to be attacked. And in the meantime, we're just going to let every country, we're going to lose all our stuff. I don't think so. So, no, I'm trying to get you guys excited because here's the thing. That's who we are, okay? That's who we are as whites. That's who we've always been. Okay? What part of explorers, conquerors, and pioneers don't you understand? It's who we are.
And with the last set of clips, I wanted to play some things he said about medical doctors. I had said earlier that I felt like Nick Fuentes actually wasn't red-pilled enough, and this is an example of what I mean. So in these clips, someone was asking him about using ivermectin for cancer. Both of Fuentes' parents have had cancer. And I'm not saying that ivermectin works for cancer, but some of the things that Fuentes said about medical doctors and about credentials and things like that, they struck me as kind of normie.
The way you completely shut down any cancer treatments outside of the healthcare system is fishy. Other resources have worked for countless people and you just laugh it off and say that's anecdotal. You need to listen to your oncologist because studies you read. Weird. ESB with your parents' situation.
It's fishy. You're a dumbass. I don't want to be anywhere near you. I don't want to be anywhere near you or people like you. So if I don't agree with you, what's suspicious about that I trust my doctor? So if I get cancer, which by the way is a life-threatening illness that there is no known treatment for. Some are more treatable than others, I understand. If I get a life-threatening illness and I go to my oncologist, I'm going to die in 6 months. I'm going to die in 12 months. I go to my oncologist who went to medical school for 8 years and is a specialist in my kind of cancer, has 130, 140 IQ, went to the top university, studied at one of the top hospitals, knows actually about how the human body works, studied it. If I trust him and I don't trust Joe Rogan, that's suspicious? Or, forgive me, a guest on Joe Rogan? That's suspicious now? Don't get me wrong. If you go to somebody for diet advice, fitness advice, I'm more willing to listen. But when people start to say, I saw something on the internet, don't listen to your oncologist, that's actually killing people. That's actually fucking killing people. And that's actually serious. When you're talking about the mRNA vaccine, I'm willing to listen because it's a new technology. There's obviously a government agenda being served. They shut down the economy because of this novel virus. They rushed out a vaccine. They suppressed information about it. That's valid. But cancer, which is something very personal to me, my mother has it, my father has it. My mother could have been dead in 6 months if she didn't have chemotherapy. And assholes are telling her and telling me, well, you need to try ivermectin. So what? The oncologist didn't look into that one? That one somehow, it got by the goalie at Northwestern. It got by the goalie at Johns Hopkins. But it didn't get by the goalie with someone that doesn't even have a degree. Someone didn't go to medical school. Someone with a 105 IQ that saw something online and swears by it because they saw a podcast. We have to be honest. The anti-intellectual stuff has gone way too far. There's all the difference in the world between saying we're not going to automatically trust the experts and saying we will automatically trust people that have no expertise and automatically distrust people that have expertise. Clearly, that's wrong. My mom hears this shit on the internet, and she asks her oncologist, what do you think about ivermectin? And her oncologist, who is one of the specialists, top experts in the field, laughs in her face. And my mom says, well, I don't know. People say on Twitter, that's like something that would kill her. So, like, you're killing people. That's just reckless and fucking stupid. And we're going backwards in time. And I'm not totally closed off. I'm a skeptic. I will scrutinize things where it makes sense. But then people start to say, I discovered a miracle drug that cures cancer. You just buy these pills and take them and it cures. It's like, okay, so what? Every person that died from cancer just wasn't put onto that? I know people that have died from cancer and they were on ivermectin. They were on all that stupid shit. People have lost the plot. It's sad what has happened to this country. It's sad because the institutions lost their credibility and now people are just mind fucked. This is like the fallacy of the masses. So all of these people that know better than the doctors, okay, the doctors that went to medical school, that studied chemistry, biochemistry, biology, anatomy, all of these doctors that went to medical school for 10 years and did a residency and saw patients and have a practice and have done surgery. And okay, all these 100 IQ people that have done none of that, don't know anything about biology, don't know anything about, they've never practiced medicine, haven't gone to school for it. It's all these 100 IQ people that have figured out science and are morally superior. It's all these 100 IQ people that figured it out through online research, not through medical school, not studying medicine, practicing medicine. It's all these amateur, not very intelligent people that found it out. And unlike the doctors, are brave and courageous enough to say something. Tylenol will kill you. They want to poison your liver because they hate us. Wait a second, methylene blue? Blue is my favorite color. I ordered 5 bottles for me and my extended family. And I'm not knocking Alex Jones, but that's just the first example that came to my mind. I mean, the alternative medicine, the fucking chiropractic that goes on in the South. Okay. So an MRI machine, it's a fucking $1 million piece of equipment. That's a scam. The Johns Hopkins 140 IQ doctor that went to medical school, that guy who drives a Lamborghini, he wants your money. He hates you. He's a craven liar. But the like fucking hippie selling you white labeled vitamin supplements by telling you this cures cancer. Yeah, but that guy knows what he's talking about. Doctors. I do trust the doctors. Absolutely. You can take your vitamins. You can take your dumbass essential oils, all your fucking Facebook mom bullshit, blow it out your fucking ass. That's so funny. The hermeneutics of online right discourse. It's like, the vaccine is a bioweapon. It's a lethal injection. Oh yeah? Then why did Israel invent it and give it to their own people? And it's like, you have to like weigh like the doctors are trying to kill us versus wait, but the Jews control everything. Why would they give it to themselves? And it's like, you know, you have all these super intelligent brainiacs debating that, you know, it's like Plato and Aristotle. The vaccine is a bioweapon. They put aborted fetal stem cells and did a satanic ritual. It contains a sigil of demons in the vaccine. It's a demon attack that's meant to kill everyone for the UN's depopulation agenda. Oh yeah, but Israel gave it to their own people and they run the world. So then the other guys, well, Israel gave their own people a decoy. And it's like, what if we just used an evidence and fact-based approach? Nah. So these psycho health people are telling us seed oils, that's an industrial byproduct. That's a waste product. Red 40? That's a contaminant. Wait a second. Is that blue dye? Blue dye is a nootropic and it's good for your brain. Like, clearly there's some inconsistency there. Clearly, you know, these people are on horse dewormer and blue dye telling you don't eat avocado oil. Don't eat sunflower oil.
So he's not a total normie when it comes to some of these things. He says he'll listen to alternative health health sources when it comes to diet and exercise and things like that. And he was skeptical about the mRNA vaccines. But when he says things like, okay, so these things, you think the doctors wouldn't have thought of that were trained in medical school. Yeah, he's just not red-pilled about the whole medical system enough. And I can't get into all that here, but I've talked a lot about that on my Substack. You can go there and look there. I have one about doctors and how they don't even read research papers, most of them. I've been working on a video about medical doctors too. It's tentatively called Should You Trust Medical Doctors? It doesn't mean that you ignore them, but for a lot of conditions, they're absolutely terrible and you have to do your own research. But yeah, when he just says things like, you think the people at Johns Hopkins, they wouldn't know about this treatment for cancer if it actually worked. He's not believing that that could be possible, but it's entirely possible. Things like that are entirely possible. The incentives are such that if there's a generic cheap drug or some cheap way to treat something, that sometimes gets purposefully hidden, and an expensive drug is promoted instead. And the doctors don't always know this. They may have the best intentions. It's just that they are surrounded by pharmaceutical agents. Anyway, I don't want this to turn into a whole thing, and I could say a lot about this, but stay tuned for this video that I've been working on it for on and off for actually over a year. I don't know why I can't finish it. It's such a big topic. I have so much to say on this. But anyway, so yeah, this is what I mean when I say that Nick Fuentes is not red-pilled enough about certain things. Anyway, so I'll just give some concluding thoughts. After watching so many clips of Fuentes back to back, I think you can see why he's kind of a chameleon. And I think this is why so many people disagree about him. They see different things when they look at him. During the course of making this video, I went through so many changes in how I saw him. There's this concept in quantum physics that comes to mind, actually. I'm not a physicist. I don't actually know that much about physics. But there's this concept of a wave function that's like a superposition of states. And in this case, it's like there's a superposition of positions that I have on Nick Fuentes. It's like a cloud. But then I watch something of his, and the wave function collapses into a definite viewpoint. But then I watch a different clip of his, and then I get a different viewpoint. That's not really compatible with the first one. Meanwhile, he himself is still a cloud. And this is exactly the sort of thing that would happen with someone who's essentially a chameleon. That's not to say that his show isn't worth watching. There is substance to it. You'll learn all kinds of things about politics, geopolitics. But fundamentally, I don't really trust this guy. That's not even based on the things that other people have said about him. It's just based on all the contradictory things that have come out of his own mouth. On the day after Charlie Kirk died, he can say things like Charlie was a good guy, doing what he believed in. Then a month later, he'll say that Charlie was an opera shell. Then he'll go on an interview and go back to saying very nice things about Charlie Kirk. And it doesn't matter if you yourself liked Charlie Kirk or not. It's that Nick Fuentes, he's not consistent. He's constantly contradicting himself. I don't know why he does that, because he doesn't need to. But maybe it's just that there are entertainment factors that are part of the consideration. A huge segment of his audience will think that he's more based the more racist or inflammatory or sexist he sounds. But then on an interview or when pressed on it, he'll say more moderate things. And those may be the things he actually believes. Anyway, it's hard to get to know someone who is so contradictory, who disseminates. Someone like that, it's like they don't want to clearly show you who they are. He hides who he is. That may sound strange to say about someone who talks a lot, who talks for a living, talks very enthusiastically, but that's the vibe I get from him. But that won't necessarily prevent him from going places. He may have a future in politics, could even be president one day. He certainly has the shape-shifting capabilities for it. And because he's especially appealing to young people, I think it's worth paying attention to him and trying to understand why they watch him. When Trump won in 2016, a lot of people were shocked, and it seemed to come out of nowhere. And that's because they were unaware of all these rumblings that were happening underground. There might be something similar going on here. I'm not necessarily saying that Fuentes is going to start a movement that will be as big as MAGA became, but at the very least, his popularity is reflection of what's going on with young people, especially young men. So for that reason alone, people should pay attention to it. Anyway, there's obviously a lot more material out there on Fuentes, and I could have watched a lot more of his stuff, but I just had to stop at a certain point. This past week, it's like there's been this voice yelling at me. He yells a lot. Anyway, I won't know as much about him as someone who's been watching his show for years, so I could be off about some of my speculations about him. Let me know in the comments below if you think I'm not right about something or I missed something important about him. Yeah, let me know. Thanks for watching.